morning, Girl Up. Welcome. Welcome to the Girl Up USA Leadership Summit, presented by P&G and its brands Always, Olay, and Secret. I'm Varisha, Girl Up Teen Advisor alumna from New Jersey. I'm super passionate about advocating for gender justice, especially within STEM fields, and I am beyond thrilled to be one of your MCs today.
And I'm Angela, a founder of a Girl Up Club in California, where I recently started my Girl Up journey. We are so excited to have all of you here in person with us today, so get ready for an unforgettable experience. We have an incredible lineup of speakers, workshops, and panel discussions just for you.
Today, we gather to celebrate the power and dedication of young activists like yourselves. From New York to California, you are ready to make your mark as transformative leaders in your communities and beyond.
We recognize firsthand the challenges our generation is facing: decimated access to abortion care, the inherited and escalating climate crisis, systemic racism, rampant censorship, and the unprecedented mental health crisis among girls and young women. But let me tell you, America's youth leaders are not backing down.
We are empowered, resilient, and ready to build a country where everyone can thrive. Yeah. And that's what the USA Leadership Summit is all about, equipping you with the leadership and advocacy skills you need to tackle the most pressing problems facing America's youth.
Yesterday, we took a global perspective and dove deep into the issues that matter around the world. We heard from inspiring gender justice champions fighting for change in their hometown communities, addressing issues like the impact of humanitarian crises on youth activism and the growing gender gap in many male-dominated industries.
Today, on day 2, get ready to roll up your sleeves and put your newfound knowledge into action. You will have the opportunity to learn and apply your advocacy, organizing, fundraising, and storytelling skills to real-life social challenges that you're passionate about solving.
We believe in your power to create meaningful change, and that's why Girl Up is here to support you every step of the way, even after our event ends. Together, we are united in the movement for gender justice.
While we know that the current socio-political landscape can sometimes feel daunting, we want all of you to remember one thing: you already hold the power within you to make the difference.
In fact, the reintroduction of Girl Up USA earlier this month is truly a testament to our collective strength. By investing even more into Girl Up USA, we are prepared to combat the rise in legislation and policy decisions that threaten our ability to live freely and build futures where each of us and our communities can thrive.
Our voices will not be silenced. Our determination will not waver, and our support for one another in a gender-just country will only grow stronger.
As we're using our voices, though, remember that Girl Up has a zero-tolerance policy on bullying and discrimination of any kind. If at any time you feel uncomfortable or unsafe while chatting with another attendee, we encourage you to speak to a Girl Up staff member so that they can address the situation.
As a reminder, when you registered for the USA Summit, you agreed to follow the Girl Up safety and security guidelines and to help co-create a brave and safe space for all. That means everyone should feel welcome and supported to enjoy their summit experience.
So let's get our USA Leadership Summit started. Get ready to learn, connect, and take action. Together, we will unleash the power of US youth leaders, and so we can contribute to creating a world where everyone can boldly move forward.
We have an exciting lineup of speakers ahead, and we can't wait to dive right in.
Chief Executive Officer of Girl Up, Melissa Kilby, will take the stage to share a few opening remarks. Melissa has been a driving force behind Girl Up for more than a decade, and I don't even want to think of where we'd be without her motivating leadership. Let's give it up for Melissa Kilby.
Woo! And then Melissa will engage in a dynamic conversation about the future of Girl Up USA with our brand new director, Priestley Johnson. Let's give it up for Priestley and Melissa.
These first sessions are just the beginning of our journey together, friends. Get ready for an energizing day filled with purpose, inspiration, and community building. And don't forget to scan the QR code at your table to access our Girl Up 101 starter pack and unlock the next steps in your leadership journey. Let's get started. Woo!
Hi! Good morning, Girl Up. Okay, I haven't been on a stage looking at all of you in such a long time, and it's so beautiful. So I just want to thank you all for coming back. It's so wonderful to be here in person. Before I jump in, I do want to take a minute just to thank the partners that make this summit possible this year. Of course, our dear champion Allison and Procter & Gamble, Always, Olay, and Secret Brands. I also want to thank the Caterpillar Foundation, who we just celebrated 10 years of partnership with. They're an important sponsor of this event. We also have a new partner, Cerberus, is here, and you all got to experience workshops with them yesterday. Thank you for your support. Wanted to thank Chief, who supported our travel financial aid to get you all here, and we'll be doing a session with them at the end of the day today. And I want to thank Sean Robinson and the Sean Foundation for your support of the event as well, and your long-standing partnership with Girl Up. I also want to thank all of you. It's a tough situation out there right now for girls, for young people, for adult women. I think we're all just in a state and in a place that's a little bit hard to believe, actually, sometimes. It's hard to wrap our heads around the real reality that we're all facing together, but you all so much so. And so by registering for this event, by starting a club, by raising your hand to be a teen advisor, by being a coalition leader, by saying, I want to do something, I want to help, I want to create change. That is bold, that is courageous, that is generous. It takes a lot to raise our hands and say, we don't like what we see, we want to do something to change it, and we think that we can contribute. So I want to thank you all for saying, I want to make change, I want to contribute, I want to join in this fight. We need all of you. We are also here with you. Girl Up is here with you. And it's going to take all of us. And we're really hopeful that the Leadership Summit, being back together in person, having this opportunity to jumpstart Girl Up USA together, to figure out what that means going forward, not just for global gender justice issues, which we know we're also passionate about, but the very real and personal gender justice issues that you are all experiencing, that you are fighting for in your schools, for yourselves, for your friends, for your neighbors. That is why there is a Girl Up USA now. We know that these are not problems that are just happening in other places. These are not rights that we're fighting for our sisters around the world. That's really how Girl Up started back in 2010. But now in 2023, we all have to link arms and fight to hold on and get back those rights for ourselves. So we need every one of you. We need all of our partners. We need our global community to stand in solidarity with us, who we can learn from. But we also have a fight. So I am really, 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 really excited for the next part of this morning and to introduce you all to Priestley. It is so important to me that we have a leader that is dedicated to Girl Up USA, to partnering with each of you, to looking at the issues that we decide that we want to tackle as Girl Up USA, and then connect that into the broader global movement that is Girl Up. I'm excited to have a thought partner, to have someone that I can learn from, but also someone that can really link arms with you all coming out of today and into the future. And I'm so excited for you to get to know her. Priestley, you want to come up and join me? Yes. Hello, let's give Priestley another big warm welcome. All right, this is a comfy couch. Okay. All right, welcome.
Hello.
It's Priestley's day 3.
It's my
so
day 3.
She's just started. We just found her. I want to know, I know a little bit about you.
Yeah.
They don't know as much about you. Can you just start by telling us about you, background, whatever you think is important for the girls to know?
Well, my name is Priestley Johnson. I am very excited to be here. It's my day 3, but you guys have been so wonderful. So give it up for yourself. That's awesome. I have a, first, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm not a mom, and I believe to be a champion of women. I believe in mentorship, I believe in opening the door, not gatekeeping, and that's like a core to who I am as a person, and I always feel like it's important to start as a person, because I'm here to serve. As a professional, my career started out working in the White House Council of Women and Girls during the Obama administration. I then went on to work on behalf of entrepreneurial women in marginalized communities to provide resources. Then I developed into a fundraising role for the International Women's Forum and did some international work, which was really amazing and awesome. And then I just came back from Michelle Obama's voting initiative called When We All Vote, doing partnership work. So rounding out a lot of my experience, it really prepared me for this position to be able to serve all of you all across the entire nation, and it's really an honor and a full circle moment for me. And I remember when Girl Up started, I DM'd Melissa on LinkedIn and was like, anything I can do to help, that would be wonderful. She didn't respond, but so it's never too late to shoot your shot. But I definitely put myself out there, and I really put a dream out there. And like for me, I would owe it to my little girl self to say, you know, this is really kind of what you've been working for. So I'm really honored to be here, and I'm excited to serve in this role.
We are so happy to have you. And I am so glad. So Priestley joined us at a Girl Talk in spring of 2020 when we shifted to virtual programming, right? When we all went home for COVID. And I remember meeting you and seeing you moderate that conversation. I was like, this is somebody to pay attention to. So I don't remember that DM, whoops. But I'm really just, it is a incredibly full circle moment to sit here with you and welcome you in. Okay, so I want to know, you've gotten to hear from the girls for the last day or so about the issues that they care about. What are the issues that you are passionate about?
Well, I would say the first issue that is really dear to my heart is the exposure and expansion of young women. I think the more you know, the more you grow. And my goal, especially in this role, is to provide more of an insight of what is possible. You guys have a lot of core skills. You guys have the passion. You have the care. And my goal is to nurture that and point you into directions where that can really thrive. And it's not only a safe place where you can survive, but you can really thrive in this world and show you really what's on the horizon. I also really care about body autonomy. We should be able to make our own choices for our own bodies, and so we'll definitely be tackling that, and and especially increasing the voices of marginalized communities. We have our own unique perspectives. There's places that we should speak up a little bit more about, things that directly affect us in a different way, and I believe there's always an avenue for more conversation.
I love that. Yes, absolutely. So glad that you're here to bring that passion. Okay, so what excites you about Girl Up USA's future?
What excites me is, I think the corny and right answer is all of you all. I have been talking to you all. You are so bright. You are so self-aware and so socially conscious, and I am in awe because I used to be that girl too. I know what it's like when you just want to help. You just want to get out there and do something that's going to affect someone else's life. And a lot of the times you're not only doing it for yourself because you recognize yourself in other people, but you're doing it to serve. You're here to give. And my goal is to be, it excites me to help you guys in that endeavor. I'm here to help, and I'm here to help you all really reach your goals and really thrive in this world.
Okay, so we are just kind of calling out Girl Up USA.
Yeah.
The channel's launched earlier this month. More to come as you get actually up and running, and we're past day 3. What is the unique opportunity, do you think, for Girl Up USA?
Well, the unique opportunity for Girl Up USA is to really create a voice that colors the U.S. very vividly. I think we have an opportunity to make some more gray areas of what it means to be a girl in the U.S. I think we have our own unique perspective, and it's not a global perspective, and so I'm hoping to go to every corner of the nation and really be able to say, okay, in Chicago, they care about, gun violence. In Miami, they care about climate action. Over here in California, in a different way, they care about climate action when it comes to the fires. My goal is to be able to highlight the different voices that you guys have across the nation and make sure it's not it's not coming out as only one singular message. We all have different things we care about, and this nation is very diverse, and my goal is to really highlight the diversity within the voices of American young women. So I'm excited.
What do y'all think about that? Does that sound good? Does that feel like you? Yeah, do you see yourself in there? Okay, so Priestley, how do they stay connected with you? What is next?
Well, I know right now we just launched Girl Up USA, so we would love your help in sharing that and following the page on Instagram. It's really important for us to stay connected, and social media is really a really great avenue for that. So we'd love for you to follow the page if you haven't already, and then also to share it with your clubs and when you go back home, because that's where we want to be able to connect with you. If you have any suggestions, if you're like, hey, we really need this, please DM the page. We want to create a conversation with you all, and our doors are open. I want this to feel like you as we grow and as we glow. I want to make sure that it feels like you and that you have a say in the direction we go in. And I'm excited to get to work and to get to know you all. If you guys want to set up coffees with me, if you have a perspective on something we should be talking about, my door is going to be open, and I'm here to listen, I'm here to learn, and I'm here to just nudge you guys in a different direction, and I'm excited to really be a part of that with you all.
All right, well, Priestley,
Yes.
Welcome to Girl Up.
Thank you.
Welcome to Girl Up USA. Let's go boldly forward for that beautiful, colorful, diverse version of Girl Up USA. Thank you so much.
Thank you all,
Yes.
and thank you all for welcoming me.
Talk about hitting the ground running. What a spectacular start to the USA Leadership Summit Plenary.
You got that right, Angela. And how exciting was it to hear from our brand new director of Girl Up USA, Priestley Johnson, for the first time with Girl Up CEO Melissa. Woo!
So exciting. I'm already fangirling. The future of Girl Up USA is bright with her at the helm, and all of us boldly leading forward too.
I love that the common thread between all of our speakers so far is the emphasis that we are all change agents.
Without a doubt, Verija, young leaders all around the country are already making waves in the world of advocacy and activism. They're not waiting for change, but are causing the change.
From organizing grassroots movements to advocating for more equitable policies and programs, youth are at the front line, actively, effectively, and passionately engaging in social justice movements.
After all, our voices hold immense power. We just need the tools, knowledge, and support to amplify them and create meaningful change.
So let's dive deep into the heart of change making and explore how exactly we can make a difference in our communities with a girl talk on advocacy, activism, and civic engagement from Girl Up leader Victoria.
The stage is yours, Victoria. We actually have a video message from her because Victoria was not able to join us in person, but we can watch that right now.
Hello everyone. It is such an honor to be speaking with you today. It is so heartening to see so many young people passionate about creating positive change and working towards a more equitable future gathered together. I think we can all agree that positive change is desperately needed as we look at the world around us. Gender inequality and the issue of autonomy persist within our borders, contributing to a global regression in women's rights. It's crucial to acknowledge that some stakeholders want us to believe that we don't have the power to create change and rely on our acceptance of that to maintain their status quo. This past year, I had the wonderful opportunity to work with Plan International Canada around the International Day of the Girl. And through this experience, I learned something very important that I want to share with you today. Plan International gathered thousands of responses from girls, spanning all regions, civic contexts, and income levels. And through this, they found that 97% of young women believe that participating in politics is important. Isn't that amazing? However, there are still some limitations. 1 in 5 young women have been personally discouraged from engaging with or participating in politics. Only 50% of girls believe that in their community's view, it was acceptable for them to engage in political activity. And only 11% reported that they were generally happy with their leaders' choices on issues that they cared about. To reiterate, a mere 11% are content with their leaders' choices. This data suggests that most young women are dissatisfied with the decisions made by elected officials that are supposed to represent their communities, their needs, desires, and goals. It's clear that there is a more pressing need for accurate representation. When examining the importance of representation, it's crucial to consider an intersectional perspective, taking into account the compound effect of race, gender, and other identities, as a lack of representation leads to the creation and perpetuation of harmful policies. In the United States, young adults have consistently demonstrated the lowest voter turnout rate of any age group, thereby forfeiting their opportunity to select a voice that represents their needs and the vision for the future in which they will reside. Only around 1 out of every 4 eligible voters under 30 will participate in elections. As a member of Girl Up, here today in Washington, D.C., you are a powerful force for change. Your dedication for promoting youth participation in important discussions is inspiring and admirable. Your passion for these key issues is shared by so many other young people who seek to make a difference in the world. Unfortunately, some of these young people will face obstacles that prevent them from voting or discouraging them from doing so. But with leaders like you at the forefront, we can overcome these challenges. Recently, I was reminded of a simple truth in which I had somehow forgotten. Elected officials are accountable to the people they represent. They do not hold as much power as they want us to believe, as we hold the ultimate power. In an effort to share this message, I decided to start Can You Vote, a youth-led organization with the mission to raise awareness and accessibility for civic education and political engagement among young people. Research has shown that committing to vote greatly increases the chances of actually casting a ballot. Therefore, we urge young people to take our pledge to vote. Our organization has partnered with multiple young leaders across the United States and Canada who are passionate about various issues. And based on our experience, we can confidently say that the next generation is not disinterested in politics. It is crucial for young people to stay informed, engaged, and exercise their right to vote where possible. Girls can have a significant impact on our political climate by becoming informed and involved. You can start small, by volunteering to phone bank, signing online petitions, reading the local news, or talking about community issues with neighbors. Local elections are a crucial aspect to the democracy, but unfortunately, often receive the lowest voter turnout. It's important for young women to participate in the electoral process at every level. Don't fall for the misconception that your vote won't count, or your voice doesn't matter, or it's not worth your time. To ensure that the voice of young women with diverse backgrounds are heard and represented, it's necessary to elect officials who prioritize inclusivity and intersectionality. It's our responsibility to hold them accountable for their actions and decisions, and to create policies which make voting more accessible. I encourage you to keep being agents of change and to take leadership on various issues from climate change to local city council matters. Let's work together to create a future where girls can confidently embrace their full potential and are no longer hesitant to participate in politics. As I close, I want to leave you with a few words from Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Women belong in all places where decisions are being made. Voting outcomes affect us all and can have harmful consequences if the voices of young women are not included. Thank you so much for your time, and I look so forward to seeing what the summit brings you. Thank you so much.
The state of sexual reproductive health, rights, and justice around the country is critical.
girls, women, and all people capable of becoming pregnant have been stripped of the dignity to make the best decisions for themselves and their families after the U.S. Supreme Court ended our constitutional right to obtain legal abortions on a national level last June.
The overturning of Roe v. Wade almost exactly 1 year ago and other SRHRJ restrictions that have followed suit disproportionately impacts people of color, impoverished communities, LGBTQ plus individuals, and other marginalized groups.
We must protect and expand access to sexual and reproductive health care in the U.S., ensuring that everyone can make decisions about their bodies with dignity and autonomy.
My fellow teen advisors and I actually wrote a statement about this on the Girl Up blog Voices, urging people to learn about the unique experiences of vulnerable individuals impacted by the lack of SRHRJ in their community. With the generous support of the Global Menstrual Equity Accelerator, Girl Up is actually in the process of creating a menstrual equity toolkit that will be accessible to all of us this fall. Raise your hands if you can't wait to download this toolkit and begin leading SRHRJ reform. Woo!
Education is an ongoing process, and to help us with this journey, it's a privilege to have an incredible leader in the SRHRJ space, Laurel Sakai. Laurel serves as the National Director of Public Policy and Government Affairs at the Planned Parenthood Federation of America, where she advocates for comprehensive, accessible health care for all and champions the rights of individuals to make informed choices about their reproductive health.
Joining Laurel on stage will be Girl Up leader Brianna, where together they will engage in a thought-provoking conversation that explores the challenges, victories, and the ongoing fight for sexual and reproductive health, rights, and justice in the United States.
Because girls and young women all around the country and around the world deserve to live full, safe, and self-determined lives. Welcome, Laurel and Brianna.
Hi, thank you so much for coming. I'm excited to speak with you. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. All right, so we could just get right on and get started. Okay, so for our first question, it's access to safe and affordable reproductive health care has been an ongoing challenge across the world, especially in the U.S. What are the potential consequences of limited access to reproductive health care, such as contraception, abortions, etc., on both individual well-being and broader societal outcomes?
Well, thank you for that question and for phrasing it in that way, because I think, Angela and Veri have raised really good points about how devastating really the fall of Roe was for all of us over the past year. But it is really important to remember that for so many people across our country, for many, many years and generations, it has been too hard to access sexual and reproductive health care. So while we've seen a lot of change and really a lot of energy over the past year of people really starting to engage in this issue, it really is a long fight that we've been a part of trying to make sure that people have sexual and reproductive health and access. And to your question as to why it's so important, it is a fundamental part of who we are and how we drive who we become as adults from very young ages. So I think it starts not only as a rights issue in terms of what it is that you can control about your own body and your own future, and it's also a healthcare issue. I'm now the mother of 2 kids, and I can tell you pregnancy is absolutely a healthcare condition. It does a lot to your body, and so being able to make that decision on your terms and with your own health risks in mind is so, so important. So without that access, you don't really know what you're getting into. So it's rights, it's health, and it's also really an economic issue. So for so many people, it is just key to being able to have a job, have a family. All of these things are so interconnected. So it touches really every part of our lives. I actually just saw some polling earlier today about college age people, and what the polling showed was that for over, I believe, 75% of people who are considering what college they want to go to, they want to go to a place where they know they'll have access to sexual and reproductive health and abortion. So this is a part of decisions that people are making every single day, and really big decisions in their lives.
Wow, especially that poll, that is a really big eye opener for me. And yeah, I totally agree. That was an awesome answer.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So, our second question is, what are some of the major barriers or challenges that marginalized communities face in accessing contraception? How can these barriers be addressed to ensure equitable access for all?
Yeah, so the way these bans on healthcare impact people is really, as you said, it hits the marginalized people first. So historically, people of color, people who face systemic racism, systemic sexism, all of those things, people with disabilities, LGBTQI people, Native people, immigrants, everyone who has additional barriers to accessing healthcare, it impacts them even more. So some of the things that you really see are economic barriers. If you don't have money to get the healthcare that you need, to get the sexual and reproductive healthcare that you need, it's going to be out of reach for you. Logistics can be a really challenging thing. I was just at one of our clinics in Illinois where they have a regional logistics center, and they have people who their full-time job is to talk to people on the phone about how they can get to the clinic. You know, what is it that they need to understand some of those dynamics and get themselves, you know, the healthcare that they need. So there can be a variety of barriers. There can even be barriers when it comes to healthcare providers. Our country has a lot of refusal laws that allow providers to basically just say, no, it's against my belief to let you have this healthcare, and that can be a real barrier if that's the first healthcare provider you talk to and you think, because this person told me I can't have it, maybe I don't have this right. So it can be, you know, all sorts of barriers that exist. And one of the things that can be really impactful when we're thinking about how to address these barriers, the way that I think about it is making sure that people have access to healthcare where it meets them. So one thing that my organization has worked a lot on when it comes to the Affordable Care Act, which was something that I think for most of you you've lived with, you know the Affordable Care Act. When I was in college, it was something that was being talked about. People were talking about healthcare reform as like a new thing that we're going to do, and it was a really big deal. And it's still a really big deal. One of the big things that was a part of it that people have really, really liked is cost-free birth control. And so I remember the first time I got to go and get my free birth control. It was amazing. It was so easy. But what we're seeing happening is that insurance companies, other people are saying, wait, I don't think that you should get that you should get that particular form of birth control. Even if you've talked to your doctor, you and your doctor have decided that this is what is best for you, we're still seeing barriers. So we're really working hard to make sure that those insurance companies and others can't say that, can't refuse you that care. Yeah, it's really important. It's really important. But not everyone has access to private health insurance. So it's also really important to make sure that Medicaid is covering birth control. And it's also really important to try to get more options, including over-the-counter options for oral contraceptives. So that's another thing that's happening right now. Later this summer, the FDA, a federal agency, will decide whether the first over-the-counter product for oral contraceptives can come onto the market. And that could be a really big deal for people who don't have insurance. So all of these things, trying to get involved in making sure that there are fewer barriers, whether it's economic, whether it's healthcare, whatever it is, we got to try to break down those barriers and bring contraceptives and healthcare to people where they are.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, it makes sense. And I do believe that whether the FDA approves it or not, for them to be sold over the counter, that will be a big deal. And that will kind of set the tone for what's to come. And that's why we do have a lot of barriers that intersect with other barriers we may already have had, like you said, race, gender. Everyone has certain barriers. So in order to get over the ones we have, plus the ones that are now coming on to us with all these changes, we have to stick together so we could break them down. Because one person isn't enough. We have to make a statement and make a stand.
That's an excellent point.
Thank you. All right, so our third question is, individuals who identify as part of the LGBTQIA+ community often face unique challenges when it comes to reproductive health care and access to contraception. How can we ensure that the rights and needs of individuals within the community, particularly trans youth, are fully addressed and included within the framework of reproductive rights and access to reproductive health care?
That's an excellent question. Um, I mean, one of the things that I think is foremost of importance is to really make sure that the language that we're talking about these things is inclusive and it's intersectional. I think for some people it can seem like a small thing or a silly thing, but it really is fundamental for people to feel like they are recognized, that they are welcome, and that they can trust the healthcare providers they're trying to access. So I'm really proud that over 400 of our health centers offer gender-affirming care, and that has been really important for people. It's to make sure that people show up no matter where their background is, that they can see themselves in the care that's being offered, that it's not just for people that identify in a certain way or present in a certain way. And I am so proud of our clinics for doing that work.
Yeah, that is amazing. And yeah, I totally agree. We also have to have open arms for anybody and everybody, because in certain situations, we all probably felt either left out or unwelcomed once, even if it was in like a kindergarten class. So we know how it feels. So people already go through enough as it is. So if we show open arms, support, we can make everybody a lot more comfortable, and we could start with the real changes and change making. All right, so I think we have time for one more question, and this is a two-part question. So the first part is, how can education and awareness campaigns contribute to improving reproductive rights, gender equality, and access to contraception? Could you share some of the key initiatives or programs that Planned Parenthood has undertaken in recent years?
Sure. Well, everything that we talked about in terms of access to healthcare, barriers, breaking them down, none of that really matters if people don't know what's available to them. They don't know their rights. They don't know what's in their communities. So really, the education is a key component of making all of this happen. So one of the things that we really try to make sure is that our resources are available online, that they can be in places available to everyone. But there's a second part of that too, that a lot of our resources are developed really on the local level. So it's a combination of both really broad accessibility and also making sure that, for people on the ground, that they are hearing from people in their communities, that they understand what is available to them, and that we try to make sure that that is happening. So one program that has been really helpful too on the federal level is the Teen Pregnancy Prevention Program, and they just did a new round of grants, and I think at least a handful of our centers got grants to be able to help find evidence-based methods that work for helping prevent unwanted teen pregnancies. And one of the things that they do is they look at not only new programs, but also replicating those programs. So can we replicate them in different communities? Can we replicate them for different populations? And how can we know what works? And then we can build on that knowledge and hopefully get people the healthcare that they need.
Wow, that is amazing stuff. That's really inspiring to hear. And yeah, I also believe sometimes there's situations where you want to make a change, but you can't directly do it. So spreading education about that topic is one of the best ways to get more attention on it and to get a lot more support. So yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, so I think we are out of time, but I really appreciate you coming to talk to me. And it's been amazing. And I feel like I got a lot more information than when I walked up on this stage with. So I really appreciate that.
Absolutely, and thank you for having me. And I just want to say it's so great to be in this room with all this wonderful energy and seeing so many people who are committed to moving forward and making a better future for all of us. So I just really appreciate you in this conversation and really all of you for being here today.
Tonight, I feel like I'm lost in the desert, but your mind always said.
All summit long, we've been learning about the issues that are affecting our communities as a whole. But what about ourselves? How can we become more self-aware and confident leaders of ourselves so we can evolve into more effective leaders in the movements we care about?
Great question, Angela. Luckily, we have best-selling author, former IBM VP, and former 7-year board member of Girl Up, Shalmina Abji, joining us on stage to guide us through a few interactive activities that'll help us discover just how we can do that. Shalmina recently published a book, Show Your Worth, 8 intentional strategies for women to emerge as leaders at work. And through a few of these strategies, we're going to show you how you can become authentic leaders of self. Welcome, Shalmina.
Thank you. It is so awesome to be here and to see everyone in person. I have missed these leadership summits, so thank you for coming. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Before we begin with our activity, Shalmina, would you mind telling us a bit about your book and why it's called Show Your Worth? Why is showing your worth so important for us to emerge as leaders?
Yes. You know, based on my experience as someone that started with humble beginnings in Tanzania, I was the first person in my family to obtain a college degree, and I worked in a male-dominated society, male-dominated field of technology. And then having worked with thousands of mentors, having mentored thousands, I'm awake. having mentored thousands of people and spoken to thousands of women, I have learned, and I experience the same, that we have a tendency to undermine our capabilities, especially when we don't see anyone that looks like us in leadership roles. We have a tendency to settle for small successes, and we have a tendency to underestimate our worth. And even when we know our worth, we must learn how to show our worth. And that's why the title of the book is Show Your Worth. And you see, we all struggle when no one looks like us. And if we don't practice self-compassion, if we don't practice self-awareness, it would be very difficult to show your worth and emerge as a leader.
Wow. Wonderful response.
Wow. After all, to truly be ourselves, we have to first know and care about ourselves. That's where the self-compassion comes in. Imagine a glass of water. If you're constantly pouring water into other people's glasses, giving them your energy, you'll be left with an empty glass. Finding balance is important, and when you realize that your own glass is empty, you have to take care in filling it back up and prioritizing your own well-being.
Indeed. And you know what I want everyone to remember is that self-compassion, self-care is not about being selfish. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Because we have a tendency to say yes to everything. We take care of everyone else, and we don't take care of ourselves. Mm-hmm. And when we do that, we get burnt out. So the reason why self-care and self-compassion is not selfish is because when you fill yourself up, like you say, fill your own glass, mm-hmm. you're able to bring that positive energy, and you're able to bring your full self to all your interactions. Mm-hmm. And as a leader, one of the biggest things you can do and the best things you can do is energize your team. Mm-hmm. And if you are not energized, how are you going to energize the people that you work with? Mm-hmm. So every time you take time to take care of yourself, remember, you're not just doing this for yourself, but you're doing this for everyone that you interact with. Mm-hmm. You will be pouring that energy onto them. Mm-hmm. So taking care of yourself is actually the most selfless act you can do, is because you're going to give it away.
Mm-hmm. That's definitely very true. So now that we know that self-compassion is key to becoming an effective leader of self, we're going to explore that together. Are you all ready to show some unapologetic self-love?
Woo! Woohoo! There should be some Post-it notes and markers at each of your tables. We want you to grab a sticky note and write down 3 qualities you absolutely love about yourself. We have a wheel of self-compassion with a few qualities that'll come up on the screen in case it's helpful, but feel free to write whatever qualities come to mind. Embrace your uniqueness and let your inner light shine.
All right, let's go. These are yours. These are yours.
Thank you so much.
Yes. And they're signed. Let's.
Wow. Wow. Oh, wrong person. I read that name. Wow. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm going to read this on the plane ride back home.
Thank you. It means the world to be here.
Thank you. This means the world to me.
For coming.
Oh my God, I'm awake finally.
Yes, me too.
Are you from the West Coast as well?
No, I'm from New Jersey. Yeah.
Should we carry on? Because the 30s.
All right.
Okay. Okay.
So, all of these unique capacities,
You can start finishing up, writing down your qualities.
Okay. Let's give it a little bit
Yeah.
more time. Because there's also a limited amount of post-it notes at every table. They have like one
Yeah.
pack.
Okay. Hey, girl up! Attention over here.
Alright. While you guys finish up, we're just gonna keep going a little bit. So, all of these unique capacities that we have are part of what helps us achieve success. But what is personal success? Success looks different to everyone, right? So how can we define it? Let's shout out a few words that define success for each of us.
Shout out a few words. What does success mean to you?
Yes. Help.
Making an impact.
Yeah.
Feeling fulfilled.
Excellent. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Love it.
For me, success means constantly growing, learning, and evolving. It's about embracing challenges and pushing past my comfort zone to reach new heights of personal and professional achievement.
Love it.
Success to me is about fulfillment and making a positive impact in the lives of others. It's about living authentically and pursuing my passions while uplifting those around me.
You know, my success has changed over time, and success should change as you grow, as you evolve, as you learn more about yourself. Today, my success is about advancing gender and racial equality in leadership roles. Because I want to see us represented in every room where decisions are made. And that's why the book, Show Your Worth, so you can rise as leaders and keep rising until you get into those rooms where the big decisions are made.
So, definitely. So now that we've shown our worth and identified our personal definitions of success, the next step is overcoming any fears, finding our voices, and contributing value at our maximum capacity. How many of you have faced fear before? Raise your hand. Yeah.
Yeah, so every hand should have gone up. Because if you haven't been scared of something, you're not pushing yourself outside your comfort zone. Yeah, yeah. So I'm actually going to share a small story of the fear I faced. You know, when I was your age, of most of the girls in this room, I was courageous, I was bold. I had to leave home when I was 15 because there was no education past 10th grade in the town that I grew up. We had no money, no one had been to college. I needed to lift my family and myself out of poverty, and so nothing mattered. I just went, I got a degree, I came to the US, and then I entered the workforce. I had a bachelor's degree, computer science from a small university. I entered the workforce in a company of 2,000 engineers. There was not one person that looked like me. Not just in the leadership ranks. There was not one woman of color in the room. And then I found out that everyone was more educated than I was. They had master's degrees, PhDs from all these Ivy League colleges. And I start to think to myself, what would I know that they don't already know? Immediately started undermining my own self because I started comparing myself to others instead of looking at what do I have that they don't have. And so when I undermined my capabilities, that instilled fear of speaking up. I figured anything I had to say, everybody else already knew it. And so not only was I afraid to speak up in meetings, I was afraid to speak up in one-on-one conversations. But here's the kicker. Within a year, because I was on a student visa, if I didn't figure out a way to create unique value, not just any value that anyone else can create, because by law, if they could hire someone else with the right visa status, they wouldn't extend my visa. And so I was stuck between a rock and a hard place, afraid to speak up. But if I didn't speak up and contribute value, unique value towards the success of my organization, my dream of lifting myself and my family out of poverty would be very short-lived. And so I have a TEDx talk. I go into detail in this book, but in the limited time we have today, what I learned is that fear was a voice in my head. And I also learned that courage is also a voice in my head, and I'm not those voices. I can actually pick which voice to feed, and I can pick the response, and that's when I coined a term called power quotient. You see, ladies, we own the power of our responses. And especially when the stimulus is negative. Your internal stimulus that says you're not good enough, that internal stimulus that says, don't speak up, they'll find out you're stupid. Don't speak up, they already know everything you know. When the stimulus is negative, you can stop. Stop and scan your mental chatter and quieten down that voice of fear and feed that voice of courage. You see, courage is not the absence of fear. It is doing what you must do in spite of being fearful. Yes, thank you. And so that's how I practiced finding my voice. I learned my power of picking my response. And when I learned my power of picking my response to my own internal negative stimulus, the external negative stimulus of stereotypes, gender bias, microaggressions, they stood no chance. This is why self-compassion, leader of self, if you don't lead your own self, and if you can't handle your own mental chatter, how are we going to handle the chatter from the outside that undermines us, that doesn't think that we belong in the rooms where the big decisions are made? So understand that you have the power of response, and understand that, yes, you're scared, but also understand that you also have a voice of courage, and you get to pick which voice to feed, and you get to intentionally pick your responses that will enable you to show your worth.
Wow. Girl up, how about we begin building our confidence and overcoming our fears right here, right now? On the count of 3, let's shout out those 3 qualities we wrote on our sticky notes as loud as we can. Let's recognize our inner power and fill this room with an overpowering sound of self-love. On the count of 3, 1, 2, 3.
I love this.
I love this.
I love this.
That was incredible. Each one of you are clearly not to be messed with powerhouses. Shalmina, is that what you were thinking of when you created this?
This is even better. The young women energize me. You are going to help me change this gender and racial equality in leadership roles. Facing our fear, finding our voice, and creating unique value in all our interactions is where we start. We don't stop there. What we also do, another strategy, is to intentionally seek relevant and meaningful growth. And here's the thing. We create value at a certain level, but in order for us to create more value, higher levels of values for all the movements that you are engaged in, we have to build our competence. The more competent we are, the more value we can create. And so when we continue to build our competence, then we can create value at a higher level. But here's what I ask all of you to do, is step outside your comfort zone. Do something that scares you, something that you don't even know whether you will be able to do it or not. Get help if needed, right? You will figure it out, especially the women in this room. It doesn't matter how many times you stumble, you will get back up, get on track because you have defined what success means to you, and you will figure it out. And the key to building confidence is actually looking back at how scared you were when you started. Looking back at how you learned to figure things out and how you have the capacity to build new competence. You have the capacity to ask for help when it is needed. And so the next time you are scared, you look back at that younger woman who was scared and you say, I did that then, I can do it again. Wow. And keep doing it. Keep doing it. The more competence and confidence you build, the more you will get outside your comfort zone, and that becomes an upward spiral for you to show your success, to show your worth.
So throughout the day, we hope that all of you can find the time to reflect on how you can utilize these strategies and insights that you've gained during this session to meaningfully grow in your work, life, and activism.
We hope you also take a moment to appreciate the incredible power and potential within each of you. Embrace your self-compassion, celebrate your unique identities, and continue to lead with authenticity and love. Before we wrap up, Shalmina, any final thoughts on how we can be intentional on our leadership journey?
I love the word intentional. I'm going to say be intentional and be strategic. No company succeeded without a strategy, and no human being will reach their maximum potential without a strategy. So, first of all, keep doing what you're doing. You are already leaders. Each and every one of us have the capacity to lead. Aim high. Don't underestimate your capabilities. You know, it's scary to step outside your comfort zone and aim high. Mm-hmm. What's scarier is never to do that and never knowing what you're capable of. So every time you're outside your comfort zone and you are trying something new, remind yourself that it's better for me to know what I can't do than leave my potential untapped. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'd like you to do is take care of yourself, take care of others, always take a chance on yourself, and keep showing your worth in every interaction possible. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shalmina, for sharing your valuable insights and strategies with us today.
Thank you. This is such an honor. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks to her guidance, I know that we can become compassionate leaders of self and make a positive impact not only on ourselves, but on the world as well.
To spread the love, Girl Up staff will be coming around during the break to collect all of your sticky notes from our first activity. So please put all your table sticky notes into one pile so they can easily grab them. We'll be posting them on the glass wall outside the ballroom, creating a powerful display of self-love. Be sure to check it out during lunch and capture the moment. If you share it on your socials, be sure to tag Girl Up and add the hashtag GirlsLead23 so we can reshare.
Yay, thank you.
Yeah, we had one.
Oh, yes.
Did you say to go?
Yes. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Speaking of
Guys, listen now.
Speaking of positively impacting her community, Brenda Toinita Pipestem is a justice for the Eastern Band of Cherokee Supreme Court and Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indian Supreme Court. In our next fireside chat with Girl Up Teen Advisor alumna Amelia, the duo discussed the intersection of sovereign rights and gender equity and how we can advocate for tribal justice.
Let's give a warm round of applause for Brenda and Amelia.
Awesome. Well, hi everybody. It's great to be with you today. I'm super excited to be talking to Brenda today, so welcome and thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Good to see you, Amelia, again
Yes.
today. I've had the benefit of being in a couple of sessions, and it's incredibly inspiring to hear from all of you, to hear what you have to say, to talk about your experiences. And there's hope, and I'm looking at it. So thank you for your commitment. I want to say thank you to Melissa for inviting me to come in to speak with you a little bit today, because I come from the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians. I grew up on our tribal lands, and like Amelia, unfortunately, I have a feeling if I did a poll and asked how many of you knew anything about American Indian tribes in this country, the answer would be very few. So I'm very excited to be here to start this conversation.
Yes, definitely. So we'll go ahead and get started with our first question. So you were talking a lot about your story, and I'm really curious, as a Native woman attorney, how your lived experiences have informed your life's work.
Well, thank you, Amelia. So I grew up on our tribal lands in western North Carolina. It's the homelands of where the Cherokee people have resided forever. What some of you may know is that, how many of you have heard of the Trail of Tears? How many of you have heard of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians? Good, there are a few of you. So my ancestors, there were around 1,000 people who remained in western North Carolina in our homelands following the Trail of Tears. So we never left North Carolina. And we were able to stay in North Carolina because of a combination of factors: law, as well as the absence of action by the government of the state of North Carolina. We were so far west in the mountains of western North Carolina at the time, that was real estate that no one wanted. So we were kind of out of sight, out of mind. And one of the treaties actually stated that if a state agreed to allow the Native people in the Southeast to remain, they could stay. Well, we had Cherokee people in North Carolina, we had Cherokee people in Georgia, in Tennessee, down into South Carolina, Kentucky, and all those lands, via treaty, via an agreement between the Cherokee people and the United States, those lands continued to shrink. Well, knowing this growing up, knowing that I was a citizen of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, and being blessed to actually grow up in our homelands and to grow up living with my extended family who spoke our own language, who continued to practice our traditional arts, our traditional way of life, there was also another really harsh reality that I learned. And I learned very early that the laws did not protect us. Native women and girls were found dead in my community. We didn't say murdered then. That was too hard for any of us to carry. They were found dead. They didn't die from old age. These were young women. There were women who were victims of sexual assault, women who experienced domestic violence, and we weren't protected. The laws didn't protect us because we lived on our tribal lands. Jurisdiction, in order to prosecute anyone who commits crimes against Native women and girls, if they were not Native, rested with the federal government. as a tribal nation. The Eastern Band of Cherokee is one of 574 tribal nations or Alaskan Native communities and villages. 574. Our place in this country as independent sovereigns, or as the Supreme Court has denoted, domestic dependent nations, is protected in the United States Constitution. So who I am, who Amelia is, we are, as American Indian women, as tribal citizens, that is a political status. It's because I am a citizen of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, and the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians has a government-to-government relationship with the United States government. So just as some of you may have dual citizenship with the United States and with other countries, it's the same. I have dual citizenship between my tribe and the United States. But having our nationhood protected in our Constitution hasn't protected American Indian people. So how I have come to the law is because I learned early on that I wanted to advocate for the safety of myself, of my family, and now as a mother, for my children. I don't want my daughters, I have 3 daughters, one's 14, and I have 2 17-year-olds. I don't want them to become a statistic. We are more than statistics. But 4 out of 5 Native women and girls will experience violence in their lifetime. 1 of 2 Native women and girls will experience sexual violence. These are really, really harsh realities. We need to have laws on the books, but we also need to have people to have knowledge of those laws so that people can protect people. And one of the things that, and just an example of how some of the laws that we have had to advocate as Native peoples, some of you may have heard of the United States Supreme Court case that was just recently passed, the Holland versus Brackeen. Any of you familiar with that? Have you heard of that? I see a few hands. Wonderful. So the Indian Child Welfare Act was passed in 1978. And for those of you who aren't aware of it, Native women and tribal nations advocated and fought for this law because our children were being taken away from us. When my children were born, they had dark spots on their back. I remember when I was a child, having family members be afraid because those dark spots, I didn't hit my children. But social workers would see those dark spots that were just, it was like a birthmark. And then it goes away as they get older. And I don't know where they come from, but my children had them. But children were taken away because people didn't understand, and they assumed that they were being abused. They were being taken away from their families and placed for adoption. So in 1978, we finally got a law passed that said that wherever a Native child was in this country, if that child ended up in social services or was going to be adopted, they had to contact the tribal nation from which that tribe was either a citizen or eligible for citizenship. People were very happy to finally get a law in the books. So remember I told you I have a 14-year-old, correct? She's an amazing young woman. I can't imagine my life without her. Biologically, she is my great niece. Thankfully, when I didn't know my niece had even been born. She was my brother's grandchild. He had been married. He and his wife divorced. She was killed in a car accident. Before they notified my brother, his former wife's family had gone to court and gotten custody of his daughter. The Indian Child Welfare Act wasn't enforced. So she grew up in Kentucky. She had 2 daughters that we knew about. We kept track of them. I called, see how they were doing. What we didn't know was those 2 children were removed by social services. The Indian Child Welfare Act was not enforced. We didn't know they had been removed. When my 14-year-old, who's now 14-year-old, when she was 6 months, no, when she was 4 months old, she went into the system. The social worker who was given her case, she knew about the Indian Child Welfare Act. How did she know? She was a social worker. She vacationed in Cherokee, North Carolina, where our lands are, the eastern band of Cherokee. So when she got a document that said the child was Cherokee, what did she do? She picked up the phone and she called the tribe. The tribe called my brother called me. He at the time wasn't in a position to raise his grandchild. He was raising his current wife's grandchild at the time. And it was a no-brainer. I mean, this was our child. This was our baby. And she is our baby, 100%. So when the Indian Child Welfare Act is being challenged, we were fearful across Indian country that they could take away this law, that even though judges, attorneys, social workers, people who are supposed to know our laws, even when they don't know, at least they're on the books. As a judge, I attend judicial conferences. And I was at a judicial conference where the Indian Child Welfare Act was being discussed, and they were talking about, the role of judges in the enforcement of this act. And one of the women in the audience stood up and said, we don't have Native children in Kentucky. My nieces lived in Kentucky. Just because you live in a state that might not have a federally recognized tribe does not mean that you do not have Native people as your neighbors. And we have large Native communities in cities. So part of the beauty of this organization, and the reason I'm so thankful for coming, is because it's an opportunity for me to share a little bit of information with you and to challenge you in whatever work that you're doing, to be inclusive and to educate yourself about the Native people in this country, because we are in crisis. Our women and girls, Google murdered and missing Indigenous women. Google the Indian Child Welfare Act. These are things that we have to deal with. But don't misunderstand. We come from strong communities, and we are resilient, and we are beautiful and smart and intelligent, and we have everything to bring to a conversation. Invite us to your tables, and let us join you in this fight to protect gender equity for all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. That was such an incredible story, Brenda, and I really appreciate you being so vulnerable and sharing with us. It was really impactful.
I think we're being pulled away. But as I go, I would encourage you, if you want to learn more, there are places that you can go. There's the Indian Law Resource Center, the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center, as well as the Native American Rights Fund. Just Google American Indian Affairs, and there is a lot of information available, but you have to work for it. It's not easily accessible. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brenda and Amelia, for that amazing insight. So next up, we have award-winning journalist, best-selling author, filmmaker, and longtime friend of Girl Up, Liz Plank, is here. Liz has dedicated her career to amplifying marginalized voices and challenging societal norms regardless of the haters.
Alongside Liz, we have Girl Up Teen Advisor Natalia, a passionate young leader who exemplifies the spirit of resilience and overcoming obstacles to break barriers.
Welcome, Liz and Natalia.
Hello, everyone. I got so excited. I forgot to take off my little my little cardigan. I'm just gonna take it off. It'll look better for the photos. But then you're wearing a cardigan, so I feel like we should. I take it back. I'm gonna keep it on. It's a cardigan kind of. We're in a cardigan era. It's so good to be back with you, Natalia, because we were together not long ago.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be back too.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to this session.
Me too.
So I think we will get started. So let's get right into our discussion on how we can deal with facing resistance and opposition in activism and pursuit of our goals. Liz, you are an author, a journalist, a host, and regularly speak out on some of the most important issues facing our society today. Being in the public eye, sharing your opinion can often draw resistance or negative reactions, especially as a woman. Can you share with us how you approach resistance or even hostile reactions when advocating for the issues you believe in?
Great question. So we were talking backstage about this question because I asked Natalia, I was like, how do you feel about this? How do you combat the haters? And Natalia shared, like, I try not to be at the forefront yet, like I'm doing a lot of things behind the scenes. And I kind of, reflected on being your age. And I guess even before social media and all that stuff, I'm not a combative or maybe I am, but I don't view myself as one, but I would get into a lot of arguments, even just in, like, as a layperson, like out in the world. And so I was telling Natalia, like, I would go to bars, and like, whenever I would hear, like, sometimes, a sexist comment or something would happen, I would just like get into a full-blown argument. And then the next day, like, I lost my voice, and my dad, I remember being like, you got to pick your battles, and obviously if you want to spend 4 hours yelling at 4 guys in a bar, like, do it. But that energy, you're deciding to spend on them, and you could spend it on, something else. And so I think it's important to choose where you invest your energy. But then I also have, learned throughout the years, as you do when you get older. I started working on a book about men and masculinity, and it's called For the Love of Men. And through interviewing men, I actually expected to be in that same kind of, for us to argue about stuff, and we did. But what was interesting is that when I really listened, I realized that they were victims of this, like, they weren't enemies, they were actually victims of the same system that was hurting me and hurting the women around me. And it kind of changed my perspective on these conversations, not just as I'm coming in to convince you that you're wrong because I'm right, but actually to expand maybe your perspective, but also expand my perspective. And it made activism for me so much better, and it made my life so much better, actually, to think about men not as, bad communication is assuming that you already know. And I was assuming that I already knew why they had a certain position, why they were acting in a certain way. And it kind of took the weight off of me in a weird way. And it, it expanded my horizons and my ability to have compassion. And actually having more compassion for the other person also was a way to have compassion and more empathy for myself.
And to reiterate what you said about sexist men being victims too, I think it's really hard to empathize when people are racist or sexist or homophobic or so on, but it's important to keep in mind that they have so much hatred in their heart, and that's why it's really hard for them to see things the way that we see them. So I think when you're advocating and you're an activist, it's important to remember that they're also coming from a place of oppression, but in a different way that we experience it. Obviously, certain people have more privilege, but their judgment is clouded because they carry so much hatred in their heart. And they're not exposed to the same love that we are exposed to. And for example, like this Girl Up community, we're so powerful together, and I've never experienced a community like this. And it's because of you all that I'm so open to meeting new people, and I just have so much love for all of you and people who are different from me and people who come from different backgrounds as me, and I hope that you all feel the same way also.
That's such a great point. That's great. That's right. That's right. And it's also about knowledge, right? And getting access to knowledge is not possible and accessible for all people. And so it's also that, understanding, right? I love what you shared. That's so powerful. Yeah. And not everyone has community like you do here, which is so beautiful and helpful to expand your mind.
Many of my peers have experienced resistance to their activism in their communities or even in their own families. How do you stay motivated when met with resistance or a lack of openness or understanding?
Good question, too. Look, there's a lot of different things. Like, there's this kind of Jedi mind trick that I do with like sexist jokes or racist jokes or even comments, right, that come up is if it's coming again with friends and family, I'll just go like, wait, I don't get the joke. and then they have to like explain why it's funny, and then they by themselves kind of realize like, oh, that first of all, if someone has to explain a joke, it's over. You've ruined their joke, and then it forces them to actually have to speak out loud. What are the assumptions that you're making with that joke? What are the structures that you're upholding with that joke? And again, I think to your point, like right now I'm doing a documentary about ableism and disability rights, and even the like quote unquote villains, right? Like the people who are doing really awful things to continue the discrimination of people with disabilities. Very often, it's because they are buying into ableism. And they are buying into that structure that makes them feel safe and makes them feel okay. And again, I think it's helpful to see them as victims too. It doesn't mean that if you're a victim, you're not also an oppressor, right? Both things can be true, but I think being able to hold both of those truths makes for much more, I think, interesting conversation, and I think prepares us for real social change, because you're coming into a conversation again with a very different sort of framework, and again, remember the times that you have changed your mind on stuff. I know you weren't all born, I mean, you're very, very smart and all right about everything. I have so much to learn from all of you, but you all had a journey, right, to the point where you're at right now, and so does the person that you're talking to, whether it's your grandparent, mom, friend, and whatnot. So remembering to sort of see yourself in the other person, even though, and again, I'm not saying like if you're in a situation that is unsafe or disrespectful, like don't. You can walk away and not lose your voice and save it for other purposes. But I think those conversations are really crucial.
I recently read a quote, and the quote was, "When you feel like quitting, remember why you started." And I think that's the right mentality to have when you're an activist. Always remember why you started, where you're coming from, who you're doing it for, and what you will contribute to the world when you face so much resistance and hatred from so many people that are carrying hatred themselves. So
That's
now,
a great point. Love that.
Thank you. Now we are going to do an interactive activity with our audience. If we can all have you divide into pairs at your tables, please. Do you want to take it? If you want. I'm happy to do it. Okay. Oh,
wait, we have to tell you what to do.
Yeah, well, we're not done yet, sorry.
We love that you already have so much to talk about, though. Natalia's going to tell you the assignment, the question.
Okay. Turn to your partner, and we want each of you to share a personal story of when you have faced resistance or opposition in your activism or leadership. We will give you 1 minute each to share your stories with each other. Remember to be active listeners. Thank you. Okay. I thought they were gonna wait a second.
I know,
was like, oh,
so much to talk about.
They're like, what do we do now? 1 minute. Maybe we could have like a 1 minute grace period. Thank you. Yeah, thankfully. I don't know what it's like to be in a type of household where.
Yeah, I know, same. Yeah. My parents sometimes are like more radical than me. I'm like, oh my gosh. They're very like super, super, super left. But I'm Canadian too.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I'll bring them back in a few seconds, and do you want to ask their volunteers? Okay. Oh, okay.
And then wrap. Okay, great. Okay, great. Great.
Do you want to pick on people? I'll bring them back, and do you want to facilitate that?
Sure, or whatever. I think you're doing great.
Okay. I think you should too. Okay, everyone, time's up. Thank you all for sharing. Now take a moment to reflect on the key lessons you have learned from hearing your partner's story. I would now love to ask a volunteer to share the lesson or insight they learned by hearing their partner's story. Who would like to share?
We can only take like 2 or 3 because of time, so let's go. You gotta raise up your hands. If you feel like you wanna share, do it. Yes, here in the front, in the blue shirt.
Well, I think I have this mentality where I face so much like criticism with my activism that it's like it's not worth it at all, and I should spend like all of my time focusing on other things that may have a more positive outcome. But just because I think this mentality can be thank you. I think this mentality can be harmful because, of course, I want to spend my time on things that are going to have more of a positive outcome. But if I don't even necessarily try to have dialogue with them, then they are still like the audience I'm trying to have a conversation with. So I'm sort of working on shifting that like ideology that it's not even worth it, because it is worth it, and I think I just need to like manage my time in a way which I can still have dialogue and conversations with the people making comments, but also have time to focus on my activism.
I love that. I think that's so great. And, you know, make your activism also so fun and positive that they want to join you, right? I think that's also part of it, that it's not just about, you know, talking to the other side or whatever we call it. It's not just these like difficult, heavy conversations. It can be like, we're having so much fun here. This is awesome. Do you want to come? Like, dip your toes, like, you know, and just inviting people in, right? It doesn't have to be, sort of being against people. So I love that perspective. I think that's great.
May I say something? Here, right here.
Yes.
So this is going to be a story that I've been doing for 25 years. As HR, the first thing you do when you come into an organization is try to help women, right? Every time, whichever organization I've worked in for all these years, it's always been leadership heavy men. I have developed this theory, and I've started using it over the last 15 years. When I sit in a leadership call, I start the conversation with, guys, I can make a policy and force you to follow it. Let's come together and make something together, especially if I want to do something for my women leaders. Because there's a lot of resistance to, oh, she's not IT, she won't understand IT. Hello, most of you don't know that women are better IT professionals than men, because I've worked with them for 25 years. So when I try to put in a rule, I try to do it in a collaborative way, because I've seen a lot of resistance in my life as HR. I started my career as a front desk receptionist. Without a degree in HR, I reached the level I am because I learned to work with them. We have to fight some battles, but we have to work with them for some battles. Some battles I say I will not stop. That's my piece. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Here, let's do this, you in the front and then you in the back, and then we're going to have to wrap.
I've loved hearing you talk. I've had also experience talking to sexist men at my school, and it's like I had to also like listen to my parents eventually and be like, this is not worth my time. But with what you're talking about, with this like advocating and things like that, I had an experience with my school board president made a sexist comment blaming our he did not like our math PSSA scores. PSSA is like Pennsylvania's like standardized testing for like K to 8. And he was not happy with the math scores. And he said that the ladies have a tougher time with math, statistically, but provided no statistics. Not even true. And I heard about it from friends, and I was like, this is not okay. Mm-hmm. So 2 other girls and I, we went and we spoke to him privately with like our principal like monitoring it. It was not a productive conversation. He like told us, he actually told me specifically that he would apologize at the school board meeting that night if I wrote his apology for him. And he had gotten me so deep into like his like gaslighting and everything to the point where I felt bad for him, and I was like, oh, like yeah, sure, like I'll write it for you. Then I went and talked to my teacher afterwards, and she was like, do not write that for him. Yeah. So I was like, okay. And then
Good
so that
for
night,
you.
that night they had me email him. They're like, email him and tell him you're not writing it for him. So I was like, okay. But that night I gave a speech at the school board meeting, and so did some other girls and mothers in the district. And I'm really, really happy that I did that, but like it was like kind of a debate whether or not I would like even get involved, just because like I wanted to, but I was also like a little bit nervous. And my parents, like they're like very supportive of me and like agree that this was like not okay, but they're so scared about like my future. And they thought that like they're like, you don't know what kind of connections this guy can have. Like, what if you don't get into the colleges you want? He's like, they were like, you've worked so hard for this all your life. Like, what if like this like gets in the way? And he like calls them up and like you don't get into college now. So I was like really scared, but I ended up doing it. And in the end, they told me that they were proud of me and that they were happy that I did.
Yay! That's awesome. You should tell everybody that he told you to write the apology. He should be worried about his future, not yours. That's awesome. Love that. Last comment, and we're so out of time, but are we allowed? No. I don't know I can't see anything also, but there was a hand up, and I feel like we want to go to that hand in the back. Oh, there wasn't. Okay, they're not letting us. So come and share your share with other people or with us after the session. Thank you so much. Congratulations, Natalia. That was amazing. I had such a good time with you.
Thank you. I did too.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Liz and Natalia, for that amazing discussion. So now I'm so excited to announce our next panel, bringing together a group of young leaders who are truly a testament to the power of youth leadership and the importance of investing in the potential of this next generation.
Longtime partner of Girl Up, TE Connectivity Foundation not only knows this, but is also fully committed to supporting youth-led initiatives and fostering innovation and gender equity in STEM and beyond. Lauren Benny, the Executive Director of TE Connectivity Foundation, will share a few remarks before welcoming our next panel on stage for a youth-led conversation on climate justice and the intersectionality of environmental activism and social equity. Get ready to hear their stories, learn from their experiences, and gain the tools to become an agent of change to create an equitable and sustainable future for all.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lauren Benny, and I am the Executive Director of the TE Connectivity Foundation, which is committed to strengthening global communities through access to technology and engineering, but specifically for women, girls, and underserved communities. I am so excited to be here today in person for the first Girl Up USA Leadership Summit and to spend the day listening to you and learning alongside of you. TE Connectivity Foundation has been a proud supporter of Girl Up since 2018, investing in the power of girls and youth to gain confidence and leadership skills needed to make change in the world. Over our 5 years of partnership, Girl Up and TE Connectivity Foundation have worked to transform a new generation of youth leaders by launching and investing in the STEM for Social Good programming, technology platforms, and infrastructure that has supported Girl Up's global growth to 152 countries and every region of the world. Together, we are proud to say we have impacted over 35,000 youth STEM changemakers to date, and we're nowhere near done. Girl Up and TE both believe deeply in the contributions of girls and women in the STEM fields and your tremendous potential to lead a more inclusive, just, and sustainable world. Girl Up's ultimate vision is to change the face of leadership globally to look more like yours, and your faces are just radiating power and joy right now. We believe in equipping you with the knowledge and skills to be leaders on some of the world's biggest issues, like climate change, food scarcity and insecurity, health inequity, and so much more. These are complex challenges that disproportionately impact girls, women, and marginalized communities. And as a result, they cannot be addressed, let alone solved, without the voices, participation, insights, and empathy of the leadership of women and girls. It will be with your ingenuity, compassion, and dedication to a global vision of gender justice that will lead us to these new and inclusive solutions. We see your inquisitiveness and your drive, and we're honored to be able to join forces with Girl Up and support the girl leaders right here in this room and beyond with opportunities for learning and skill building that will transform our world for the better and change billions of people and families around the world. You are all phenomenal already. Thank you for letting me join you here today and share this moment with you. I am delighted to introduce you to this next panel on climate justice, featuring Maya Penn, environmental climate activist, educator, author, animator, and founder of Maya's Ideas. Shania, a Girl Up Team Advisor alum, and Alinka, a Girl Up Coalition leader. I cannot wait to hear this conversation, especially after our discussions just right before this panel. So please join me in welcoming Shania, Maya, and Alinka.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Lauren, for that beautiful introduction. We had such an engaging conversation before coming with you all today, and we're really excited to keep that conversation going. And I will start with our first question to both Alinka and Maya. What initially inspired your passion for climate activism? We know that everyone has unique skills and perspectives that they bring to their advocacy, but how do you approach climate justice your way?
In first. So my name is Maya Penn. I am a Gen Z environmental and climate justice activist. I've been in this space since 2008. I started at 8 years old. And now at 23, I've been in the space for 15 years, which is very hard for me to wrap my mind around. My environmental activism focuses on a number of different areas. I'm very passionate about the underserved sections of activism within the environmental and climate space. So anything from environmental justice and how Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities, both in the global North and communities in the global South, are most adversely affected, as well as gender justice and how that overlaps with climate. Per the UNDP, 80% of people displaced by climate disasters are women and girls. And so many other factors, such as disparities that are already affecting women and girls, such as access to housing, disparities in mobility, unpaid labor, and gender-based violence, and so many other layers make it so much more difficult for women and girls around the world to also access relief after disaster and extreme weather hits. So that's something that I'm also very passionate about as well. I'm also, as was mentioned, an artist and an animator and a designer. I started my own eco-fashion line in 2008 called Maya's Ideas. And I also, being an interdisciplinary artist and animator, I'm really passionate about accessibility to information and making these complex topics demystified and humanized and even fun to learn more about and engage with. So in a nutshell, just I have always too many ideas in a nutshell, but I'm so passionate about making this movement something for everyone because it is an issue that affects literally everyone in some degree.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be on this panel with you both, and it's so inspiring to hear how you're illuminating so many facets of climate justice that are often underrepresented and need so much action. So you can never have too many ideas.
I'm just so honored to be on the panel with y'all. I mean, you're gonna be blown away. Oh my gosh. Okay, we were talking so much in the green room. Like this, we need a 2-hour-long conversation.
Oh, absolutely. My name is Alinka. As mentioned, I'm a Girl Up Coalition leader. And my climate action journey began in the classroom, actually. And I tell this story because I think it just shows how important it is to have climate education and to be, confident in our knowledge as young women. But it all began when I was taking a marine biology class when I was 14. And my teacher ended up being elected as a state representative in New Hampshire, which is where I'm from. And so, although he left halfway through the year, he talked to me and he said that the research I'd been doing for my midterm project on plastic pollution was actually something relevant to a piece of legislation he was hoping to introduce.
And so when he wrote this bill, he asked me to come and testify and to share what I had been learning as a student before policymakers. And I remember being just so terrified to do it, because when I walked into the room in the State House, I just saw this massive U-shaped table with legislators sitting at it, and they were all men. And I was the only young person in the room and the only young woman. And I just remember thinking, what did I get myself into and why am I here? And my voice was shaking and I delivered my statement. But after that, I realized I want to do this again, because I think it's important, because if I wasn't there, nobody who was really affected by the climate crisis would have had their story told. But also I didn't want to do it alone. And that's when I decided I want to find that kind of space. So I joined Girl Up, and since then I've been really doing a lot of work at the intersection of gender equality and girls' empowerment and climate justice, because I think that girls are the solution. We're the ones who are here showing up and leading these global movements for climate justice. I mean, you can see it just like on this bench, but we really need to have our voices heard in those policy-making spaces so that solutions are designed for us and by us. I now have a question for you both. Climate change is sometimes thought of as this issue that affects everyone universally, but we know that climate effects are most felt by young people and marginalized communities, and I know that you both have really been addressing that in your advocacy. So how do you talk about those intersections of climate and gender and race and age in your work? And when you receive pushback, is that something that, how do you approach that? And how do you really integrate that intersectionality in your activism?
Yeah, I can start. So for me, I'm from Houston, Texas, and the intersectionality of climate justice is absolutely critical to my work and to my experience within the climate justice movement. Growing up in Houston, there are petrochemical refineries right next to public high schools. Because there are no zoning laws in Houston, students are going to classes right in front of these petrochemical refineries, oftentimes having explosions and missing days and days and days of school because of the danger that this poses to their community. And not only that, but it also causes respiratory health issues. And most of these communities are Black, Latina, low-income communities, and they're most affected by the petrochemical refineries, by the effects of that. And so for me, after Hurricane Harvey struck Houston and witnessing the effects of the oil and gas industry in my hometown, I knew that I couldn't stay silent, and I knew that this had to be an issue brought to light. And so I organized the Houston Youth Climate Rally, which really focused on emphasizing how marginalized communities in Houston are affected by the oil and gas industry, are affected by the lack of zoning laws, are affected by consistent legislation that deregulates the oil and gas industry. And so for me, these intersections of gender, of class, of identity, of race are critical, and they cannot be ignored. And so for me, the way that I speak to this is really emphasizing the stories of these communities. I spoke with many students at Pasadena High School who experienced living right next to this petrochemical refinery, and they talked to me about how they've missed days of school, how they've fallen behind on their work, how that oftentimes they have to still work after school. And so not only they're experiencing falling behind in school, but also they're trying to support their families. And so I think hearing the stories of folks that are really being affected directly by this crisis is such a vital way to really bring these intersections to light. And so for me, storytelling is a really big part of my experience, as well as just advocating for these communities that are facing the effects head on.
Yeah, that's so amazing and so impactful, and I think just seeing those issues in your community and casting light on them and sharing those stories that otherwise they don't get told and they don't get that media coverage, but the people who are most affected by the climate crisis need to be the ones who are being given that support and those resources. So I think the work you're doing is amazing. And Maya, how about you? How have you tried to cast light on these intersections in your advocacy?
So I've kind of used so many different kind of methods and means and platforms, and anything from, of course, speaking, rallies, activism, all the way to using art and social media and kind of new emerging forms to reach people who feel like this is something that is far removed from them, when in actuality, they already have a place. Everyone already has a place and a role in this movement. It's just about taking control of how you want to show up. You know, I always want people to feel like they belong and that their lived experience especially matters as well. I have my own nonprofit organization called My Ideas for the Planet, and that's focused on both environmental and humanitarian issues. I launched it in 2011, and for example, one of our ongoing projects that I started in 2012 has been creating eco-friendly sanitary pads for women and girls and menstruators in Haiti, Senegal, Somalia, Cameroon, and in the U.S., and through different healthcare facilities, distributing those. And like that's just like a small way, but a very massive way in the same breath to tackle two issues that are from both an environmental and from a period poverty aspect. I'm really passionate about kind of overlapping kind of how my action shows up. And I love what you just said about storytelling as well, because during the Obama administration, I was actually commissioned to animate the opening of the first ever digital report presented to U.S. Congress, and this was to get an American Museum of Women's History built in Washington. And the thing that showed me, and I was 16 at the time, going to the Capitol and presenting this animation is also shown to President Obama the next day. The thing that really that experience showed me, and which is why I utilize art and animation so much in my work as well, is that art has such a huge place within the movement and to create more accessibility to education and actually make real world tangible change as well. So there are a number of different ways, but those are two that stand out for me.
I love that. That's so impactful. And I love how you've been just harnessing all these different mediums to create change, and also just making sure that we don't treat these issues as being completely separate. I think only 64 out of 190 climate action plans at the national level even mention gender. And if we keep on treating these issues as separate, then how are we going to really take action at those forgotten intersections? And I think that it's just so cool that you've been doing so much work right there where it's most needed.
Yeah, that's incredible. And in our previous conversation before the panel, Maya talked to us about eco-anxiety and what it means to advocate for climate justice as young women fighting for our future when oftentimes we feel like the burden is on our shoulders. And I'd love to ask Maya, how can we heal? How can we approach this movement through strength, through resilience, and mitigate this eco-anxiety while also empowering ourselves and others to feel that they can still make a change no matter how daunting it may feel?
Absolutely, and I just love how beautifully you pulled together that question. And I know that we have about 3 minutes, but I do want to pause and mention that eco-anxiety is something that has been recognized by the American Psychological Association, which is a fear of environmental doom. In case any of you are like, oh my gosh, that sounds like me, we need you and your voice in this space and fight now more than ever. I'm someone who is a solutions-based activist, so I'm not just here telling you, here's what's wrong in the world and how we're all being negatively impacted by these issues, but here's what we can actually do about them. Here are the solutions that are being created by so many amazing young people around the world. How can we scale them and support them and make sure that not only our voices are heard, but each other's voices are heard? How can we pass the mic to each other, support and lift up each other's lived experiences, backgrounds, expertise? And it's really about community and collectivism. We can't do this without working together. And I'm also very passionate about intergenerational activism as a member of Gen Z, and that's why I also love spaces like Girl Up, where we get to be in intergenerational collaboration and community, because it is all hands on deck situation, and everyone feels like they're just one drop in the ocean, but every drop creates a ripple effect. So I think that taking it from that community-centered approach and knowing what you as an individual bring to it already, what do you already care about and love and are passionate about, and how can you weave that into your work? Because 9 times out of 10, climate already affects whatever that thing is for you, that is your core passion or interest. So
amazing. Yeah, think that's such an incredible message to take with us, is really understanding that we all have a role in this movement, and no matter what it looks like, no matter what it manifests itself as, that we can really take charge and really empower ourselves and our communities to really take swift action to mitigate climate change.
Yeah, I love that. And I think one thing that's really provided me a lot of comfort and inspiration as I've tried to find my place in this movement is this idea that there's no one-size-fits-all way to be an activist. I think it's common to think of someone who's holding the megaphone in front of a massive crowd of people if someone asks you to just close your eyes and picture an activist. But there's just so much work that you can do that really suits what you are caring about and what your skills are, whether that's art and animation or storytelling, or, that can be speaking up in front of a crowd, but there's so much logistics that goes behind the scenes to even create that and make that possible. So I just think hearing from climate advocates like you just makes me so excited for how we can all pull together our skills and kind of create that, intertwined puzzle of all of our pieces fitting together to create climate action.
Yeah, I really love that, for sure.
Amazing. Well, thank you both so much for this incredible conversation. We are so happy that we got to discuss this with you, and we hope that you all take this message and really apply it to your own activism. Remember that one size does not fit all, and to use your creativity, use your inspiration, use your mind to make change.
I think we have time for a quick call to action if any of y'all want to, how everyone can support, the work that you're doing and get involved with your movements as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my goodness, there's so many ways. I think just continuing the conversation, being confident in what you specifically bring to the table, and share your story. And one thing that I encourage you to check out is the Women Speak database online, which I've been helping to create. It's the first database of just women's contributions to the climate movement from around the world. And just reading about all the amazing work that women are doing is an incredible way to just plug into the movement and gain inspiration and keep amplifying work like what Maya and Shania are doing.
Yeah, and to add on that, I would say look into your community, look at the environmental issues that your community is facing, whether that's access to clean water, whether that's food deserts, whether that's housing rights, and really see how you can get involved. At Boston, I've been involved with Sociedad Latina, which is an organization that works with Hispanic youth to combat food deserts, to combat homelessness. And so really looking into different organizations in your area and seeing what they're doing to tackle these issues is, I think, a great way to get involved.
Yeah, and again, you belong in this space, and I share a lot of information about a myriad of pretty much everything that we just spoke about today, and you can learn more about my work at, I'm at Maya's Ideas everywhere, and I'm really passionate about, connecting with, everyone, communities like you, people who are in the room, because we are the future and the now of this movement, and we're stronger together, so thank you.
Next, we are incredibly fortunate to hear from teen advisor Ananya, to have her join us for a girl talk where she opens up about the power of storytelling to shed light on the experiences of girls and youth impacted by the criminal justice system. Welcome, Ananya.
Hello, my name is Ananya Bhatia. I am 17, a current teen advisor from Shreveport, Louisiana, and last summer I had the opportunity to intern at my local juvenile court. So before I share my story, I want to say that I will be touching briefly on topics of inequity, marginalization, poverty, sexual assault, and incarceration. If these topics are difficult or triggering for you in any way, please do not hesitate to take a beat and take care of yourself, whether that means stepping upstairs for some fresh air, stepping away from the main room, or talking to our safety and security lead, Chandira Davis. Please do what is best for you. Now, I want to start by answering the questions I had when first going into my internship. What is juvenile justice? What does it mean to be a juvenile in a detention center? And by the end of this talk, what does it mean to be a girl who finds herself interacting with the criminal legal system and placed in a juvenile detention center? Put simply, juvenile justice is how kids up to age 17 are prosecuted and judged by the law. If we were to be accused of committing a crime, we would have our case heard at the juvenile level, and thus be punished differently than an adult would. If a judge determined we were guilty of a felony or a misdemeanor level crime, we would be put in a juvenile detention center. the parallel to an adult prison. It is important to know, though, that in some places here in the US and globally, youth can be charged as adults and end up in adult prisons and jails as well. On any given day, nearly 60,000 youth under age 18 are incarcerated in juvenile jails and prisons in the US. My state of Louisiana has the highest incarceration rate in the world, meaning there are more people per capita behind bars there than anywhere else globally. We rank 49th in the US in both poverty and education, and in my city, 27% live below the poverty line. So according to the numbers, we live in a perpetual state of crisis. As such, my director at Juvenile Court describes our work as the front lines. So when I entered my internship, I was completely naive. I knew these basic facts, but I didn't actually understand how kids my age ended up in the legal system. I thought strictly in the way society had programmed me to. If a kid broke the law, they are a criminal, and they should serve time and learn their lesson. But after reading my very first case file, I realized this mindset is what fails people every day. So I want to walk you through that file that changed my mind. This one was of a 15-year-old girl who was charged with battery of a school teacher. Those were the facts on the first page. It's what would make a newspaper headline, right? But I was asked to basically do a case study on this girl, so I had to dig deeper. It turned out her mother had her when she was 17. Her mom was already living in poverty at the time, so she survived because of the support from different men to care for and fund life for her and her daughter. Thus, she ended up with 2 more kids. Each father's was different, but both were abusive men. One of those men repeatedly sexually assaulted the girl I was case studying when she was very young. It left her with what we call complex trauma, and thus a number of trauma triggers. Because of all of these things, the girls went on to have a very unhappy childhood. She had no financial security, relied on junk food and school lunches for sustenance, went to neighborhood schools where she was diagnosed with behavioral issues, and finally made it to high school, where she developed an unhealthy relationship to drugs while simply trying to cope. Eventually, in class one day, she threw an object at a teacher because she heard a sound that reminded her of her childhood abuser. Her trauma was triggered, and she lashed out. Neurologically, she genuinely couldn't control that action of her body going into a panic. Now, I could take another 10 minutes and explain how that process works in the brain, but instead, I am just going to ask you to trust me. This 15-year-old girl had been neglected and broken by our world, and now saw herself in front of a judge who, by law, sentenced her to 30 days in our detention center. I went on to learn that every female-identified youth who has ever entered our local detention center has a history of sexual assault, trafficking, or trauma. In the US, what is true is that we incarcerate the traumatized. And after speaking with probation officers, security guards, and sitting in the courtroom myself, I know there are more single mothers and grandmothers in the court lobby than any other type of guardianship, all trying to provide for their children in the way they know best. So as I have started to define juvenile justice for myself, I don't see the limited technical definitions I started with. I see an issue of inequity, generational trauma, systemic oppression, and poverty, amongst others. I see a system that disproportionately incarcerates people of color, LGBTQIA+ people, and survivors. I see an issue where mothers are at the front lines. I see youth, especially girls who are in these detention centers, as kids who have not seen justice for the crimes committed against them. I see the story of the girl from my very first file. We are all here today because of varying levels of privilege, from funding to the schools we attend to simply the food on our tables. But I ask you, would we really be here at a summit in DC if it wasn't for all of that? If it wasn't for support to face the various levels of oppression we are expected to navigate? It is always hard to finish a race if you've had to start 100 miles behind everyone else. I know I wouldn't be able to. The girl's story I shared with you is the story of millions who have gone through the juvenile justice system. Each is looked down on by members of their society and thus policymakers. Each is blamed for their city's rising crime rates or seen as a strain on taxpayer money. But really, each deserves our empathy. So I ask you to please let go of the narrative that you would have been the success story. The thought so many people keep in the back of their brain of, well, if I was in her position, I would have just made different, better choices and never ended up in the system. Because the truth is, girls who do enter the system don't even have the luxury of choices. They often are just trying to survive. I'm not saying they don't make a mistake, but I'm saying there is always a reason. What would it be like if instead of asking what they've done, we ask what happened to them? What happened to make them survive so strongly? A pillar of this summit is training us to be better advocates. So I want to leave you with a few calls to action. I ask you to locate your closest juvenile detention center. Mine was actually just a 3-minute drive from my school. Call and see if they could use a drive for educational resources, or ensure they provide free menstrual products to their inmates. Learn about how legislation impacts youths who are being prosecuted in your community. And most of all, recognize how powerful the voice and experience of the incarcerated and formerly incarcerated can be in your advocacy, movements, and development. I titled this Girl Talk, Juvenile Justice, the Thief of Girlhood, because that is what happens to girls in the system every day. Their joy, spirit, and passion never get to develop. Their dreams are never fostered. They are disappeared from their communities. But after today, I hope you see them differently from how society tells you to. I hope you see them as resilient and in need of understanding in an equitable justice system, and I hope you see yourselves as capable of leading that change. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ananya, for the absolutely wonderful insight. So next up, here to delve into the powerful intersection of sports and gender justice and illuminate how everyone can fully participate in and benefit from the world of athletics is DC United Chief Marketing Officer Lisa Franklin and Girl Up Teen Advisor Burke.
Thank you so much for joining me this morning and allowing me to pick your brain for your insights and experiences. That being said, should I dive into the first question?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
What is it like working in a male-dominated field? What challenges have you faced and how have you approached them?
It's a deep question. So prior to sports, I actually was in tech. So it's with Microsoft and Google and Facebook. And then I was also in gaming with Xbox. So this is the third time that I've entered into a I seem to like them, actually. The third time I've been in a male-dominated field. And to be quite honest, initially I was taken aback a little, I have to say. There were, the conversations in the room were a little bit different. And I had to become comfortable with bringing my full self and sharing my ideas the way that's authentic to me. And that took a little bit of time, not much, because you don't have a lot of time to a runway to get to that point, but it's been rewarding for me. Each of those fields, especially now sports, you have an opportunity to change the narrative and also impact the way others approach the industry as well. And so that's been really good for me.
Oh, that's really admirable. Yeah. I actually have a funny tidbit about the Xbox story. My brother, as it goes, teenager, is obsessed, and my mom was so fed up she threw it out the window.
No.
So,
tell him I can get him another one.
Oh my God.
I still get my Microsoft discount.
It's going to be ecstatic. So the Xbox did not fare well, but yeah. I guess I'll segue into the next question. What were your experiences with sports growing up? What made you want to get involved in DC United?
Yeah, so funny, I started in karate. Karate's considered a sport still, right? Okay. I started in karate and transitioned into basketball and track. I went to an all-girls high school, so everything around the school was around sports and activities and learning about the team concept. And so for me, when I was younger, that is the part that I remember through high school, and then I played a year in college, is that the ability to be able to work with individuals who are all bringing a different perspective, but all have a different purpose in the team. And, a lot of times we're all very competitive, smart, and everybody has their own ideas. And so what sports did was allow me and those around me to see how you can work with individuals who are all bringing that same brilliance to the table, and to be able to figure out when to step forward and when to slide into the gap. Right, and that's so impactful in your lives and everything that you're doing in school and all of the work that you're doing outside. Is that sometimes that brilliance has to show itself in different places, in different spaces, right? And so for me, that's what sports was. I enjoyed it. I still do. I ended up marrying someone who was in tech, and then he became a college basketball coach. So college basketball is a big part of my household now, and then I have all 3 of my kids play something.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
awesome. I also went to an all-girls school, so it's just really nice to have the privilege to be like the priority in sports because you're not having to compete like with the boys and like them being the priority and I guess like fun cuts. So it's nice to like have to relate on that. Also, my basketball career was cut short. C team, they had tryouts first day. They told everyone line up from shortest to tallest, and you can tell where I fell on that line.
Mine was cut short in college if I sat the bench the year that I played, just so we're all clear.
Okay, moving on to the next question. Tell us about your average day. What does your daily routine look like as a chief marketing officer for DC United?
Yeah, I'm really focused and having an edge, right? So I wake up, even coming here, I didn't go into the office first, but my first thing was reading about what is going on in the world and then also the industry. And so I spend a good 30, 45 minutes looking at that. And then I'm very data driven. So then I always pull up numbers to look at how our business is doing. I oversee not just from a fan engagement, ticketing sales, but also merchandise sales, our community involvement. There's just a number of things, and all of that comes into the ROI for the team, which you'll learn more. That's the focus of a lot of sports teams. And so I really dive into the numbers. And then I spend a lot of time trying to pull together very authentic stories, right? And so how can I get people to connect with us in a way that makes sense for them? And every person is gonna have a different connection and inflection point. And so I spend a lot of time during the day with that. And then also looking at for unique ways outside of what people are typically doing in sports to get people engaged and connected to our team.
Yeah, it sounds like you're multitasking down to a T.
Yes. Some people believe you can't multitask. I beg to differ.
You're versed.
Yeah.
I also love that you try to humanize the people's stories that you're telling.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. What do you believe is the greatest challenge facing women in sports today? What are some ways these challenges are uniquely experienced by women of color and or trans women?
I don't think we have enough time for this question. One is lack of funding. And so if you look at dollar for dollar, what is invested in women's sports versus male-dominated sports or men's sports, you're looking at, on average, a 50% deficit, if not more, right? And then you look at the fact that there's a pay equity issue, especially when you talk about professional sports and now in college athletics, what they call name, image, and likeness, which is collegiate athletes getting compensation for their image and likeness. And so because they don't make the same amount, most female athletes will have to take on a second job in addition to their sport. So they can't spend the same amount of time with their craft, becoming better, stronger, et cetera, because they can't afford to. And then you look at the lack of interest and or airtime on a number of different outlets, whether it's radio, TV, digital publications, print. So now I'm gonna tell you a story because I'm a storyteller. So if I say that a lot of this is based on revenue, because that's what people will tell you, that women's sports, the investment, the airtime, the pay is based on the fact that they don't generate the same amount of dollars, well then think back from a marketer's perspective. The reason is if you start with the content, so start at the end, if they're not getting the airtime, then people don't know who the athletes are. They can't develop a connection with them, so they're not gonna follow them. They're not gonna buy their jerseys, they're not gonna attend the games, so then you have a decrease in ticketing sales and revenue. And then that correlates to what? Pay equity, because you're not generating the same amount of revenue, so I can't afford to pay the athletes the same amount. And so between male and female athletes, especially in some of the highest revenue generating sports, it's not a 50%, it's more like 70% difference.
That's really insightful to see the underlying reasons why women's success in sports isn't guaranteed.
Yeah.
And I guess that definitely compels me to action to fight through that and like schedule when they're coming on and support my local teams and whatnot. But would you rather do one more question or a call to action? I think we only have time for one more.
I could do one question and a call to action.
Okay. How did you prepare yourself for this work? How would you recommend others get involved?
So for me, I always took on the things that most people would not. So when the opportunities hit the table and everybody questioned whether or not it could get done, I was usually the one that took the risk. So I'll say first, I'm a measured risk taker. I go after the things that I believe can get done that other people, because if it was easy, everybody would do it. And I know a lot of you are seeing that in a lot of the work that you're doing now. And so that's the second thing, of the willingness there. The last thing is that I'm willing to be a consistent learner, right? So I'm a consistent student of everything, even though I've kind of been around, as people will say. I'm constantly learning and learning from the people around me, learning from, third parties. I'm open to everything, and I'm honest about what I don't know. So.
I'm glad we have you as a role model in like a male-dominated domain to look up to when things get rough. But do you think we should do one more question or call to action?
Yes, so call to action is please, support. There are a lot of stories out here about female athletes that are trying to make a difference, not only in their community, but in the sport as a whole. Even if you just take one of those stories and retweet them, share them on Instagram. I know nobody's on Facebook anymore. But even if you put them on TikTok, just being able to share that story, if one person does it and all of you in the room just, share one story, we're able to get more information out about those individuals. So,
thank you for sharing your insights.
Thank you.
That was awesome. Thank you so much.
As we continue our deep dive into the most important and intersecting issues our generation is currently facing, it's crucial we explore the complexities of racial justice here in the U.S.
That's why we are so honored to be joined by educator and writer Brittany Packnett Cunningham, a fearless activist who pursues justice with love and freedom. A leader at the intersection of culture and justice, Brittany has made a massive impact on profoundly shifting society towards systems of equity, from public education to criminal justice reform. Without further ado, welcome Brittany and Winter.
Good morning. Good afternoon. What time is it?
It's morning?
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
Wonderful.
I get to be with you. We got on the pink situation.
We're
I get to be with
matching.
all of you. I'm fantastic.
I'm so excited to be sitting here with you today and interviewing you, asking these questions. I would love to hear your amazing, amazing insights. I've done such extensive research on you and all of the wonderful things.
I am so sorry.
No, don't worry.
But thank you for doing that.
Of course. I had a great time. And something that I found when I was doing my research is that in one of your interviews in 2020 with Elle, you presented this call to action for intersectional feminism and acknowledged that, instead of being afraid of the word intersectional and afraid of what intersectional feminism calls us to do, we should see it as an opportunity to imagine a world that works for everyone, that that fits every mold rather than what we have seen in the past. And I think from your perspective, I would love to hear how do you think that those who have always seen themselves represented within the movement can work to ensure that other historically and currently marginalized and oppressed voices are amplified and pushed forward in the movement going forward?
That's such a great question. Thank you so much for the care you've put into this conversation. Intersectionality is one of those words that scholars knew and then activists knew, and now everybody thinks they know. It's a lot of people think it has to do that it's the same or it's interchangeable with diversity, and it's not, right? We're talking, I know I'm preaching to the choir, but just to make sure we're all on the same page and working from the same definition, when Kimberly Crenshaw, a Black feminist legal scholar, coined the term, she was talking about people who have multiple marginalized identities and experience the intersection of oppressive systems at the same time in different ways. So she was talking about what it was like to be a Black woman in the legal profession, right? Because she's got the marginalized experience of a woman, the minoritized experience of a Black person, and she recognized that as a Black woman, her experience was different from white women who have racial privilege and gender oppression, right? But it's also different from, say, Asian American Pacific Islander women or Indigenous women or immigrant women, right? And that all of these different intersections are not about adding up the different oppressions, but actually recognizing that at that intersection of those systems, there are multiple different oppressive experiences, and that the way that Black women are treated in the workplace can be different than the way that Asian women are treated in the workplace, can be different than the way even between East Asian and South Asian women, right? So you can keep breaking this thing down. And I think it's intimidating to a lot of people because people are like, oh my gosh, how many categories can you make? It's like, well, 1 million, right? If you really want to have the conversation, we can make a whole lot of categories. So like sit down and get comfortable because we got work to do.
Right.
But what the beauty of the concept invites us to do is to think about how we build policy, and that's big P policy that they build here in Washington or in state houses, or small P policy. If you are managing a team or you run an organization or you've built a club at your school, all of those places have policies. Right? You have rules and regulations and systems and culture and traditions that you hold to, and you want to make sure that all of those things are built with everybody in mind. And the trick of intersectionality is that if you build your policies for the people who have the least amount of privilege in the room, then the beautiful thing is that actually everybody benefits. So instead of being intimidated by that, we should see it as a beautiful invitation and opportunity. I think COVID has been a really powerful reminder of this. We were talking in the back with Liz about disability. There were a lot of things that benefited all of us in 2020 that the disability rights community had been fighting for literal decades, right? And if we had built policy that allowed people to work and study from home, that gave people better access to broadband internet, that actually created real accessibility suddenly when everybody needed it, if we had been doing that for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, it wouldn't have been so hard to transition in 2020.
True.
And everybody realized, oh, these things that disabled people had been fighting for decades actually benefit all of us. And now that people think that the whole thing is over, people are going back to being like, oh, well, it's fine. We're going to go back to the way that things were. And disabled people are like, okay, all right. You're going to find out one way or the other. And I would much rather us find out about this because we finally figured it out the right way than have a bunch of people unnecessarily suffering the wrong way.
Absolutely. That was a very powerful message. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah. I think it takes a lot of courage to kind of be that person to speak up and say, hey, like we've made progress, but there's still much more progress to be made. There's many more communities that need to us to make more progress. And in many instances, women who speak out against injustices such as yourself are urged to kind of grin and bear it or be grateful that they even have a seat at the table. Even if it's just one seat, just one.
Yeah.
And I mean, is simply having a seat at the table enough to bring about meaningful change? Is it, how do the power dynamics that have already been in place and the lack of representation that we've seen for generations influence the effectiveness of advocates and their ability to try and push for this change?
See, that's why you're good, because you're asking the real questions. I'm all about it, Winter.
Thanks, girl.
Listen, as my good sis Angela Rye says, my ancestors built this joint for free, which means this is my table. You got a seat at my table, to be very clear, right? And I had the really special privilege of doing a show on PBS called Finding Your Roots. And so there were award-winning genealogists who did the research on my family. So literally, I can tell you the names. I can tell you about Joanna and Jacob, and I can tell you about my ancestors who died in the Civil War fighting for free. Like I know that this is my table, that every place I am, I belong. an abundant life is my birthright. And operating in that mentality is antithetical to the system that I encounter every day, to the systems that we all encounter. These systems would much rather, as we were talking about before, would much rather us be tired, downtrodden, depressed, doubtful of ourselves, burnt out, and very simply so grateful for a seat at the table they told us was theirs that we're afraid to even speak up because we're afraid somebody's going to take the seat out from under us, right? That attitude of gratefulness that they are selling you to have is to trick you into being quiet, frankly, right? Because if you're so grateful to be here, then you're not going to shake the apple cart. You're not going to rattle things too much. You're not going to shake the table. I'm a table shaker. I don't know any other way to be. I know you're all table shakers. That's why you're in the room, right? I mean, don't shake these tables. They are set up beautifully. The flowers are lovely. But
shake the table metaphorically.
Right, shake the table metaphorically. And so I reject that idea precisely because they don't want me to. Right? And I really hope that every single one of you in this room recognizes that every place you occupy is a place where you belong, and it's our collective responsibility to make sure that if you've got a seat at the table, you kick the door open to bring in 10 more people who have perspectives that even you don't have. That if they don't give you a seat at the table, as Shirley Chisholm would say, that you bring a folding chair. And frankly, that you build a table so great, so powerful, so massive, that those folks who rejected you will be begging to have a seat at your table, and you can say, nah, this ain't the table for you.
I mean, that was beautiful. Your words are so impactful. I got the chance to speak with you a bit earlier, and just everything you said really resonated with me. And just hearing about your incredible journey and the amazing strides that you've made for not only Black women, but for women in positions of leadership. I mean, you have in advocating for racial justice, mental health, so many things. I mean, what advice would you give to this group of girls, to me, and most importantly to your younger self, for how to navigate this world for people who want to make a difference, but maybe feel like that the table isn't theirs?
Yeah. Oh gosh, these are such good questions. I would tell my younger self, and I will tell all of you now, that every single second, minute, hour, day, month, year that I spent trying to contort myself to the archetype that I was told was the right one, every time I tried to fit into something that did not fit, every time I tried to maneuver my mind, my body, my spirit to occupy a space that clearly was not for me because I was feeling like a square peg in a round hole for a long time, every waking second that I spent doing that was a waste of time. Because nobody who ever changed the world fit in, right? I mean, if you really go down the list, Maya Angelou did not fit in. Michelle Obama does not fit. They still talk about that lady in her arms. She does not fit in, right? Right? There's an ownership that I have taken years to have over myself, my life, my legacy, where I come from, what I'm made of, and who I was designed to be. And I wish that I had gotten to it when I was 19. I wish that I had gotten to it when I was you all's age. Because that conformity does not set anybody free. It won't set you free. It won't set the communities that you're working with free. And I think that I wish I had learned that earlier. What I will say, though, that I have learned since is that the superpower in being uniquely myself and striving to show up every place as myself means that when I show up as my free self, I give somebody else permission to do the same thing, right? So if we leave this room and y'all are like, she wasn't that good, but I got one person to think about.
Nobody's gonna say that.
But here's
Literally nobody's gonna say that.
But guess what? It's okay, because I showed up here as my full self and I have no regrets, right? And so, but if one person walks out and says, you know what, I think I can sit up a little bit taller. I can be clear that I belong in the space that I'm in, right? If one person benefits from me being myself and feels permission to be their full selves, then like I've won the day, right? I remember running an education organization back home in St. Louis. And I was speaking to hundreds of teachers. I was the first Black woman to lead that organization in a really long time in that region. And I go up in front of the room, it's maybe about 500 people in the room, to speak. And I don't remember what I was wearing that day. A couple of months later, I had lunch with one of the Black young women who was in that room. She was an assistant principal. She was moving her way up. She really cared about young people. And I thought we were going to have a conversation, about her career and the things she wanted to do next. And did I have any advice for people to connect her with? And I came totally prepared for that conversation. She started off the conversation by reminding me what I was wearing. And I was like, why do you remember that? I probably just wore it because it wasn't wrinkled. She was like, you had on this orange blazer and a matching skirt. And she was like, I had never seen a Black woman in color before, standing in front of a room full of people in charge of the organization, right? And 10 years before that, I would have thought, because I used to work on Capitol Hill, I would have thought I had to wear navy or gray or black in order to be seen as authoritative. But if I've got the job and I'm running the organization well, and we've been raising more money than we've ever raised before, and our teachers are doing better than they ever have before, we're more culturally responsive than they ever have before, I don't need to worry about what I wear to prove to you that I have authority. I have authority because of who I am. I have authority because I've gotten the outcomes. I have authority because I walk up in here with confidence, knowing what I know and knowing that I don't know everything, so I'm willing to listen, right? So why not wear an orange blazer? Right? And I realized in that moment that simple choice of showing up in the way that made me feel good that day, that made me feel most like myself that day, gave her permission to do the same, right? And I had no idea that I was doing that in that moment, but it happened because I decided to show up authentically as myself. So I am begging you to learn the lesson far earlier than I did, because you will free other people when you free yourself.
Thank you so much for being willing to engage in this conversation with me. Your words, your wisdom, it is awe-inspiring. And that one person, that's me. There's probably way more though. It's definitely more than one.
Well, the feeling is very mutual. And Winter, I gotta tell you, after getting to know you over the last hour, I'm very excited to hopefully have a seat at whatever table you are building, because it's going to be a big and beautiful one. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you all so much.
Wow, I have goosebumps, and it's not just from the AC. That conversation has left me inspired and standing a little bit taller. I think, though, it's time for another leadership activity. What do you think, Angela?
I'm so in, Marija. Oh, how about we explore the power of purposeful communication as leaders of peers?
Great idea. Communication is the foundation of effective leadership, and we're about to experience it in action. So here's what we're going to do. Each of us has a ball of Play-Doh at our tables.
We want you to begin passing the ball of Play-Doh amongst your peers sitting beside you.
So yes, there will be Play-Doh. There should be tubs of Play-Doh. You may need to make balls out of them. But as you pass the ball of Play-Doh, notice how the clay molds into different shapes. Pay attention to how it flows and how it changes as you pass it across the table, roll it smoothly, or even when it gets stuck.
That's right, Marija. Each action with the Play-Doh reflects different qualities of communication. When you throw it across the table, think about how that mirrors the importance of reaching out and connecting with others. It's like throwing ideas and thoughts across the table, sparking collaboration and synergy.
And when you roll the ball smoothly, observe how the Play-Doh smooths out, just like a conversation that flows effortlessly. It represents the power of active listening, transparency, and open body language, creating an environment where ideas can be shared and understood.
But what happens when the ball of Play-Doh gets stuck? Sometimes conversations hit roadblocks or become challenging. This is when we need to break it up into separate pieces, just like breaking down a complex conversation into smaller, more manageable parts. Try it and see what happens.
Absolutely, Angela. By breaking it up, we can navigate complicated conversations with empathy, patience, and inclusivity. It's about finding common ground and seeking understanding, even in the face of differences.
So now let's pause for a moment and connect this activity to the previous leadership activity from yesterday. Remember those communication skills we identified? The communication tone, active listening, transparency, clarity, open body language, and asking open-ended questions? Think back to those skills and how they play a role in effective communication.
Excellent point, Angela. Becoming an effective communicator is essential for becoming an effective leader. Through purposeful communication, we can foster synergy, collaboration, and empathy within our peer groups. It helps us navigate complicated conversations, build inclusivity, and ensure that everyone's voice is heard.
So as we resume this activity, I want you to think about how you can apply these communication skills in your own leadership journey. How can you use them to build bridges, inspire others, and create positive change within your communities?
These skills will help you become a leader who not only communicates with purpose and makes space for everyone, but also inspires others to do the same. Let's take another minute to continue passing the ball of Play-Doh and reflecting on the power of purposeful communication with your table mates.
I should have brought up the. I didn't really. It's a. They all have tubs? I think so, right? Most of them? Yeah, most of them have it. You said a minute, but it's 30 seconds. Okay. Fantastic job, everyone. Oh.
Huh? It's okay. We're good.
Yeah, you can give it to another group, yeah. I think we'll wait a little bit longer.
Yeah.
We're all just playing with it instead. It's really fun.
Okay.
I don't know who designed it, but.
Okay. Hey, Girl Up! If we could get your attention back up to the stage.
Okay, so fantastic job, everyone. Remember that effective communication is a continuous journey of growth and learning. Embrace the power of communicating with purpose as you lead and uplift those around you.
Thank you all so much for participating in this activity. Your willingness to engage and explore the qualities of communication is truly inspiring. Of course, if you're interested in more collaborative activities like this, scan the QR code on your table and sign up for Girl Up's free online leadership course. Looking for one more reason why? A special bonus for all of our USA Summit attendees is if you enroll today, you have the exciting opportunity to be paired with a buddy you met here so that you can take the course together and continue to support one another during your leadership journeys. Let's communicate with purpose and drive positive change in the world so that we can make powerful waves in the advocacy space.
Speaking of making waves in the advocacy space, it's time for our next panel. Featuring Girl Up Teen Advisor Shreya and Teen Advisor alumna Michelle, and moderated by writer and Young and Restless author Maddie Kahn, this discussion showcases some of the most bold and brilliant work being done by passionate youth activists around the world. Prepare to be blown away as these motivated young changemakers exemplify the power of youth leadership and the impact it can have.
Welcome.
Hi everyone, I'm so excited to be here with you guys. you all may know this or you may not know this, but if my name looks slightly familiar, it's because you all should have the book that I wrote that published 2 weeks ago. Very thrilling. Thanks. So my book is all about the history of teenage girls and activism, so I know I'm in very comfortable, welcoming space right now. But the first thing I wanted to ask both of you is how you each got started in activism and whether there was a particular issue or cause that brought you into it that made you feel like I really want to make a difference here.
For me, I got started in activism in 10th grade, which is my sophomore year, and what really got me started in my fight for sexual and reproductive health and justice is learning that there's 23 million girls that drop out of school every single year because of lack of period product access, and also a much larger population of girls that just drop out of school because of lack of education access in general. Yeah. So I think that's what really got me started.
Thank you so much for saying, Shreya. And I think for me, I first got involved in activism in my sophomore year of high school. And so during my sophomore year of high school, I remember taking classes like AP Physics and AP Chem and noticing that like there was very few females, like girls in my class, and even fewer black women. Like I remember being like one of the only two black women in my classes. Mind you, this is at a predominantly African American and Latinx school. So for like us to only have 2 black women in our AP STEM classes was very concerning to me. And like, that's how I first wanted to like get involved in activism, because I wanted to see more women and more women of color, even more in STEM fields. And I wanted like there to be more access for us in STEM opportunities. And I think I even got even further in activism after the COVID-19 pandemic and witnessing like how like there are limited resources available to women and how like a lot of like mortality rates rose for women during the COVID pandemic, and like just wanting to advocate for more women in STEM and women in healthcare.
That's amazing. Thanks so much for sharing. I think one of the things that was striking to me writing this book and talking to so many incredible young women and women who were activists as young people is that obviously, and this room is a testament to that, it's so powerful to be among your peers, to learn from people your own age, to do collective action with other young women. But I also think mentorship and the example of people older than us is so helpful because it's the thing that gives us perspective. So I'm wondering, in both of your lives and in the activism that you do, what role do you think mentorship plays in helping girls kind of understand what's possible?
I think mentorship and access to support is very important in the role of activism. I think it's very important to seek out help and support, especially as high school activists. That's when I first started. It's very important to have a support system. I remember when I first became involved in leadership and my role with Girl Up, I seeked out some help from youth leaders in my community, and they taught me the basics of being a leader and leading meetings and organizing fundraisers and initiatives. And I feel like those meetings really kind of shaped who I am today, even though they were a long time ago and very short and very sweet. But I feel like I wouldn't be the person I am today without those meetings. And I feel like every leader in this room today should never be ashamed to seek out support and help and mentorship, because it's very important, and you will be a much better leader if you do seek out the support of other powerful women in the room.
For sure, and we know like activism can be lonely. I mean, this room is an amazing community, and hopefully that exists, in this country and around the world, but sometimes it can feel really isolating to be a person speaking up. And for you?
I think mentorship is very important, and I think that's like one of the main reasons why I really love Girl Up, because you're surrounded by like a community of like powerful, positive people. Like between now and yesterday, I can say I've made about like 50 new people, 50 new best friends just from interacting and hearing the amazing things that everyone here, every girl here is doing. And I think Girl Up is just an amazing environment that provides that mentorship, and I think it's very important. Just to have that one person say, oh, I'm proud of you, or I believe in you, can go a long way. And I think that's what Girl Up does.
Yeah, incredible. I totally agree. And I think that the history of girls and activism is a testament to that. That's how things happen. That's how change happens. But the other side of things is that it can be a lot of pressure to be a young activist. And burnout is real. Every single person in this room knows that. The mental health challenges of trying to take on systemic problems that have been issues for centuries but have been left for this generation to deal with, that's a real thing. In terms of self-care, how have you both found sort of able to set your boundaries between yourself and your activism and make sure you're taking care of you while you're also taking on these huge problems?
Yeah, self-care is super important for me in terms of activism because I realized that back when I used to not prioritize self-care and I used to never put myself first, I realized that I wasn't really being effective in my activism and leadership because I learned that the more you prioritize yourself and the more that you're nurturing your body and yourself, you're more able to effectively nurture relationships, and that's how you can form big and strong sustainable communities, which are very important in leadership. Because that's what we need right now. In the current state of our world, we need to build strong, inclusive communities that are sustainable and strong and empowered. And you can't empower other people unless you empower yourself and you love yourself and you're prioritizing self-care.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
I think I heavily agree with you, Shreya. You stated it perfectly. And I think self-care is very important. And sometimes it can be very hard to like prioritize and just take care of ourselves, especially with activism. We want to change the world. And like also I think for many women and just women of color too, we're often told to be strong and just take on the world, solve all the problems. But like it's okay to rest. Like it's okay to rest. And like please do rest. Please do take care of yourselves. Like I think just understanding like there's no shame that comes in rest or no shame that comes in asking for help. And like that's something that I would want all of us to do and just take with us too.
Yeah, completely. Yes, claps for that too, please. It's kind of like how people love to call young women fearless, but they don't like to give them a lot of power or respect. We're going to change that. I think that one thing that happens a lot with young activists is there's this sense that young people are so impulsive, they make decisions, in an instant, they're not thinking things through, and obviously the incredible strategists in this room know that that's not true, that amazing organizing takes a lot of deliberation and planning. How do you guys think about sort of the reputation that young women have, or a sense that you're being underestimated with balancing that with what it really takes to be an effective activist? Do you ever let that get to you?
Well, I think some people confuse the term reactivity with impulsivity, and I feel like people, whenever they see like powerful women doing initiatives, they think that they're just being like very impulsive and maybe leading themselves into consequences and stuff like that. But I feel like all of that comes out of a place of good intention, right? Like every initiative that we do comes out of passion. But sometimes it is important to make sure that we are being responsible with our movements and making sure that we don't get ourselves into consequences or any unsafe environments. And so as Girl Up leaders, it's important to remain accountable and to make sure that as Girl Up, we're setting a good example of what a good leader should be like and what are some safe initiatives to hold and some fearless ways to act on whatever it is that we're passionate about without being impulsive and making informed and thoughtful decisions. So I think as Girl Up, we are doing a good job of that and setting a good example to young girls all around the world. And I think we can definitely change that perception that people have on young women being impulsive and restless.
I think as young women leaders, I think we're all constantly challenging that narrative because it does take a lot to show up and show out and show up for our communities, whether that's through protests, through activists, through legislation, through advocating for different legislations. I think we're constantly challenging that narrative of us being impulsive, because I think it takes a lot to be an activist. It takes a lot of planning, a lot of dedication, a lot of effort, and so I think that's an amazing thing that we're doing.
Absolutely. How do you feel like your own lived experiences and the backgrounds that you come from affect the activism that you are interested in, and what have you sort of learned about inclusivity from the activism that you do?
I think being inclusive within activism is very, very important. As activists, we need to be intersectional activists and be sure that we are understanding the perspectives of everyone in the room so that we can be effective leaders and effectively make change in our world. I think a really great way that I've learned to do that is through storytelling and listening to other people's stories and really understanding the perceptions of everyone. And I think that's really helped me because once I started listening to people's stories and really acting on them, I've become a better leader and a better activist. And I think intersectionality is very, very important.
Totally.
I think for me, very quickly, I remember earlier during the spring semester taking a class called multicultural health, and so it focused on like public health and like how different ethnic and minority communities across the globe and across the country handle health and healthcare practices. And so one thing I remember learning is like women in general just aren't being treated properly when it comes to the healthcare fields. Like a lot of the facts, like a lot of the stuff that were put in the textbooks that I study are just not catered to the female body. A lot of it's dedicated to like the male body, and even like when it comes to prescription medicine and like, for example, pregnancy and like delivery, a lot of it just is proven to be harmful to women, and like the rates of like maternal mortality are so high, which is one fact that we learned. And I just remember being so shocked about like how this information has not been addressed. And I think that has like pushed me and my peers in my activism. Like when we're talking to a lot of girls here that are like interested in STEM, and when we're talking about these facts in like the STEM fields and in healthcare, and like these are just something that I would want to change. And it's like, for me personally, it's like even pushed me further to advocate and like be a better activist.
Yeah, I mean, information is power, right? We know that, but I think a lot of people don't have access to that kind of information, which is why it can feel like such a revelation to learn these things. The one thing I wanted to ask, sorry for the curveball, but you guys are so good at this, I know you'll be okay. Since this session is about voices and platforms and seizing a microphone, which luckily we all have right now, I'm curious who encouraged you guys to use your voices, or what was the first time that you felt like there was something powerful about being heard as a young woman?
I think there's a lot of women in this world that have like inspired me to become an activist. But I think the one person that I could always think of is my mother. She's like a very avid feminist, and I think I learned a lot from her. I remember when we used to watch like old movies like Cinderella and stuff like that. I used to like it a lot, but she would be like, no, like you should never like change yourself for a man. You should never like run after the man. Like I hate these Disney stories because like every single princess is always running after the man, and like the man always saves her, and I don't like that. And I was like, oh, and like that like really changed my perspective from a really young age. And I think that's what kind of evolved me into a feminist from a really young age. And I can always be thankful for her for that, because that's who I am today now.
Yes, let's hear it for moms.
I think for me, I remember I was a TA during 2021, and so our TA coordinator, her name is Rocio, and I'm gonna say Rocio because I remember entering as a TA. Rocio would always push me to talk and to say, like, she would always tell me that, oh, your opinions and like your thoughts always matter. I would always shy away from speaking. I was really, really shy, and sometimes I would be like, okay, I don't know if I can like add this or insert this, or if I would be smart enough, and Rocio would just always tell me like to never think like that. And I remember she would even add during meetings like, oh, Michelle, do you like want to add anything? And she was just like the first person that showed like she really believed in me, and it really went a long way having that one person believed in me and tell me that like I was smart enough and stuff. Okay, now I'm gonna tear it up, but like shout out Rocio.
Yes, and to call back to what Brittany was saying in the last session, I think the amazing thing about being a young active person is that we actually can all be that kind of person for somebody else. Every single person in this room can ask themselves in a room that they're in, is there someone else who has an opinion that's important that needs to be shared? Is there a way that I can speak myself and amplify someone else with me at the same time? That is how movements are built. That's how change happens. And really the power to do it is sitting here in this room. And I really believe that. And now I can say with a few centuries of historical data that it is true. On that note, I just would love to ask both of you if there's anything that you feel like you wish you knew when you were just starting out that activists who are getting started now should know.
I would always say like there's always community. Like even though it might be hard to find your community, but your community is definitely out there. And I think that's one of the amazing things about Girl Up is that they have these events where we can find that community. And then also just to say that like one small thing I would like to say is like what you have to say matters, and you should not be afraid to share what you have to say, and like you're not going to be shamed for that. Like your voice really does matter. What you have to say matters, and you also matter too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just echoing off of her, definitely telling my younger self that her voice does matter is would have changed her world back then, because I remember I was super duper quiet whenever I was little, and I would have a lot of opinions, and my family is also pretty opinionated because of my mom and stuff, but I would never really like talk out loud, but I wish that I did back then, because I probably would have inspired other people at a younger age as well. So yeah.
Okay, so that's your marching orders. Speak up, be heard, and help other people be heard too. Thank you.
Well, this is it, the final plenary session of the USA Leadership Summit.
We are rounding out this morning with a fireside chat with none other than Girl Up champions Monique Coleman and Malia Baker. Fun fact, Monique was Girl Up's first ever champion, and Malia is our newest champion.
So the two actresses and activists get real about all things gender justice, the evolution of the Girl Up movement, and the hope they have for this generation of change makers. Put your hands together for Monique and Malia.
Hello, everybody. How are we doing? I'm just so excited to be here.
I am too.
Yeah.
You guys are so quiet. You all are so quiet. But
Right?
I can feel that the energy is very engaged, and it's just so exciting to be here with all of you.
Totally. I mean, we've been sitting over there, and it's just been like, oh my gosh, they're so cool the entire time. So just trying to interpret that too.
Oh, so I'm going to get started. I guess my first question is, how did you initially get involved with the gender justice movement and Girl Up specifically?
Mhm.
And if there have been any sort of challenges or barriers that you've faced in your journey?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think being a young girl in today's society, honestly, it was an involuntary kind of thrown into it all. You're automatically going to be affected by what we're having to say here today, especially, and what we're trying to be talking about. So I think it just happened really naturally. But with Girl Up in particular, I did this one show called The Babysitters Club, and I loved, that was my first big project, and I loved it so much. And it was created by all women, and I mean, the original books was created by Anna Martin, and she's this incredible woman entrepreneur who I looked up to so much, and I met her on that first season, and I thought, oh my God, I want to be as cool as her one day. And so I just kept up with it, and I was fortunate enough to stumble across Girl Up on my socials, and here we are today. It's kind of spiraled into this amazing opportunity, and talking with people like all of you today and hearing the stories that have come before what we were just listening to has been so incredible. I think challenges, though, I think being in socials in general and being in the public in one way or another, you're going to be automatically on blast. You are just there. You're going to be, you always have to prove yourself every day. And so I think I've been thinking of myself as more of a squeak in terms of this beautiful choir that you all have been singing. And I think just finding that you are here for a reason, and it's all working out for you because you've worked for yourself, is really the biggest challenge that I've overcome. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Before you ask your question,
Yeah.
I just want to say, too, that I'm really happy for you where you are in your journey, because I know personally, being an actress, being in the limelight, and honestly, anything that you do can be so pressure-filled.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're anchored in purpose, when you find something
Mm-hmm.
that you can attach yourself to that is bigger than yourself, I find it to be incredibly grounding. And it's, for me, over these years, it's given me an enormous amount of perspective at times where my career has ebbed and flowed, to know that I'm a part of this incredible organization, and that I'm a part of, what really matters in the world in terms of progressing humanity forward. And so I'm really excited for you, and happy that you are on this journey, and
For sure.
you're the perfect person.
Aw, well, I mean, I've looked up to you for literally since I was this height. So this is really exciting in general, and the fact that you've kind of followed this path as well has been so inspirational. I think I can speak for everyone here when I say it's like, wow, she's super cool. I think just being here today and having these opportunities to have these conversations, especially with younger girls in particular. I mean, after COVID in general, I think it's been so isolating. And the talk beforehand, they were talking about how isolating activism can be in general. And that's just, it rings so true. So coming here together, it's already doing something and it's already meaning something. But with that, I'll go into your question now. I'd love to hear from you as well, Monique. How did you get involved with gender justice and Girl Up? Were there any barriers you had to overcome in your advocacy journey?
Yes, I will start with the barriers, and I will say that imposter syndrome was the biggest barrier that I had to overcome. Feeling enough, feeling worthy of the position in a sense, feeling inexperienced and ignorant a lot of the times. I think the hardest thing was to recognize that it's okay to not know and to ask, and it's okay to lead with vulnerability, instead of, this sort of perceived confidence that in fact sometimes confidence actually comes from simply just taking that step forward. So for me specifically, High School Musical obviously was, a life-altering it was obviously a life-altering experience for my career, but it also was a very revealing moment for me. It was something that made me recognize that all the things that I thought were going to save me from myself weren't, and that the aspirations, and whether that be in entertainment or anything that we desire to do, we have to be mindful that we aren't doing that in order to keep us from evolving into the people that we're meant to be. And so for me, fame was really very shocking and also very revealing of my own personal insecurities and how much I needed to be seen in order to feel worthy or valuable. And so after High School Musical, I actually ended up launching a movement called Gimme Mo, which basically I thought, as a person, there's a whole generation that saw Taylor McKessie as this iconic person. But I realized that Taylor was a character, but that I'm a person, and that I get the opportunity to use the 5 minutes of fame, if that's all I was going to get, to make an impact in real people's lives, because I didn't see myself and don't see myself as any more special, talented, beautiful, or anything. I see myself as someone who is blessed to have an opportunity and a platform, and I wanted to use that opportunity and platform for good. And that led to becoming the first ever United Nations Youth Champion for the International Year of Youth. Yeah. And I ended up initiating and funding a global tour where I traveled to 24 countries in 6 months to understand what young people experience and face globally. And one thing when I came back, I realized is that I needed to harness and focus that energy somewhere specifically. Like we've talked about all day, it can be very overwhelming to try to take on all the challenges of the world. Yeah. And so I realized that, being a woman, and that back then it was the MDGs, I think the Millennium Development Goals, not the SDGs, but we were working towards gender equity. And when I found Girl Up, I feel like I found a home. I found a place that I could always come back to remind me of my own journey, and where I knew that my words were not going to fall on deaf ears, and that throughout this journey, it's been unbelievable to get to witness the evolution of leadership.
Yeah, for sure. How old were you when you did High School Musical?
I was 24, 25.
So you started this then, huh?
Yeah.
This has been like a very big journey.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. It's been so, inspirational to say the least, to see you grow and figure out kind of paving this path for literally all of us. So being the first ever Girl Up champion, that's a big title. That's a huge title. So congratulations.
Thank you. And it does, in some ways, it feels more important to me than anything I've ever done.
Yeah.
Everything else is so subjective, right? Like you can have your favorite show or your favorite movies and so forth, but to see girls that light come on in your eyes, where you realize the power that you have in your voice and in your heart, and that the choices that you make actually matter, and that the work that you're doing over the course of these days is lifelong. And I was sitting over here with Melissa, just like tearing up, hearing Michelle talk about Rocio, because we actually went to Ethiopia together many years ago, and just to experience the journey that we can be on is incredible.
There's no better person to be on this journey with, I'm sure. So that's incredible.
Yeah. Let's see. What do I have for you? Okay. So, my love, because we're running out of time because I talk so much. Sorry, everybody. I guess what I really want to know is, I want to know your why.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
we're going off
literally
here.
going off the script a little bit. I want to know your why, and I want to know how you intend to continue to mobilize young people. Like, what are some of the tools that you use to engage and mobilize young people in the gender justice movement?
Yeah, well, I'll start with why now that my mind's on it.
Okay.
I came from a single mama who's sitting right there, so she's...
Hey, mama.
And I have a younger sister, and I think they've just been kind of the biggest inspiration and the reasoning why for all of this, really. And I think just watching them grow. I mean, my mom's a yoga teacher. She was like super cool. She used to come to my school literally every week, and that was traumatizing as an 8-year-old. So, but so inspirational to see someone just take power of literally all those annoying little boys that you thought no one could ever control in the world. And have that being your mom as a person was pretty freaking cool. So I think I'd definitely say she is the biggest inspiration and part of the why. But also I'd have to go back to Babysitters Club. I mean, I was into like 6 months of auditioning at that point, and my mom gave me a deadline. We live like an hour from the city, and so to get there, it was this big thing. And of course, I have younger sisters, so we both did dance and a bunch of activities, and it was just a lot of carpooling and chauffeuring. So to go to the city for a 30-minute audition was this biggest thing. But when I got that one, it was like, okay, this could be worth it. We read the books growing up, and having Marianne in particular being this young girl of color, this young mixed girl who looked like me. I was a super shy kid as well, so even being here today, I'm like, this is cool. And so just looking back at myself, I think, thinking of like my 5-year-old Malia, who was so scared to just even talk about her opinions or to voice her feelings about anything. But they were always there. It was just, they didn't come out. And yeah, I think that would be my why. As for what got me into Girl Up and what I continue to do in the future, though, everything, hopefully. But I think just figuring out more ways of connection. I feel like I got into the industry when COVID was at its peak, and I haven't had any opportunities like this before where I'm able to look at actual faces, not on a screen. I mean, even Melissa, I just met you for the first time today, and I've been like Zooming her for years now. So it's just a cool opportunity to have these in-person events and to be able to have these real connections with people. And I think that's what's gonna hopefully continue happening, whether that's in charge of my own or having other people, honored to be other people's kind of guests. Yeah,
I love that.
That's for me. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. I love that. Where do we want to wrap it up?
I don't know. I thought we had less time, so this is kind of fun.
We've got like another minute. Do you have a question?
I do, actually. Okay. Actually, I do.
Okay.
What do you? I know.
Who needs cards?
What do you think that your younger self would have wanted to hear the most from you right now?
Ooh, You're gonna be okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's what we all really want to know, right? And that's why we do what we do, is so that we all can just be okay, and that we can pursue our dreams and our passions and our desires. I think it's so unfortunate in some ways that we have to use so much of ourselves to fight to exist. you know, to know that we matter. And yet it's so incredible that we get to be here in this room with each other. And so I think I would just let myself know that even when I'm not okay, I'm gonna be okay. And that's what I wanna say to all of you. Even when you're not okay, you're going to be okay. And that, you know, this is a community, essentially. It's not about the individual, it is about all of us collectively. And, you know, at your tables, you do have now people that you know will always remind you that you are not alone in this fight, and that when you are tired, it is okay to rest, to put down your arms, and that the greatest weapon that you have is your heart, your intellect, and your persistence and will. So
For sure.
yeah.
Well, I'd say as a young person who's looking up to you right now, give it up for our first ever Girl Up champion, y'all.
And give it up for our newest champion, Malia. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. What a finale.
What a plenary.
What a journey it has been at the 2023 Girl Up USA Leadership Summit so far.
Before we wrap up our plenary session, we have 3 announcements. First, we are going to shift the schedule to have a working lunch during workshops, so please grab lunch next and then head directly to your workshop.
Second, the workshop with JP Morgan Chase will now be in room 15 right across the hall. The workshop on the agenda-based violence will still be here in this room. And third, please take your cups and plates out of this room with you. The hotel staff dressed in black outside the room will collect them.
Before we conclude this plenary, we want to express our gratitude one more time to all the speakers, panelists, and fellow youth leaders who have shared their invaluable wisdom and experiences with us.
And of course, our gratitude to all of you, our brave and bold participants. Your dedication and commitment to creating a better world inspire us and give us hope for the future.
So when it's time to bid farewell to the Girl Up USA Leadership Summit, let's carry the spirit of this event with us. Let's continue to uplift each other, amplify our activism, and work together to build a brighter, more equitable future.
Don't forget to stay connected to the Girl Up movement by scanning the QR code at your table to learn how you can start a Girl Up club, sign up for our free leadership course, and join our online community platform where you can chat, connect, and collaborate.
Keep shining as leaders of change and never forget the power of your collective voice. We are a movement, not a moment.
Let's fearlessly forge ahead, unleashing our unlimited power and continuing our journey towards a world where gender justice is realized and all people can thrive. Because when girls rise, we all rise. Yeah!